Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 461, What Can You Offer? All the other participants could not believe what they were seeing for a moment. They all froze in astonishment as they witnessed the destructive power of Zen's pagoda. From merely its appearance, they assessed that it was more powerful than theirs. They were still figuring out how Zen managed to reinforce his pagoda during the first round and made it this formidable. The power of Zen's pagoda was beyond their imagination. During the first stage of pre-qualifying match, most of the 400 participants were already knocked down. The remaining cultivators who were still running at the chance to make it to the main event were the cream of the crop. The round with the giant turtles was typically difficult. Only those who had exceptional strength and patience could survive the violent attacks of the hill-like giant turtles. Most of these participants had exerted all their means to cope with the giant turtles. Some of them had used powerful secret skills, and others had expended their blood essence. Nevertheless, they had managed to pass the test and reinforce their pagodas to level 10. Now, there was only one task left for them to do. They were supposed to challenge other participants, defeat them, and advance to the main draw match. But now, upon seeing Zen's pagoda, they knew that their chances of advancing became thin. After realizing that, their astonishment on their faces was replaced with anger and resentment. They felt disgruntled at the seemingly unfair advantage of Zen's pagoda over others. They all wondered, he's only at the level 3 of Illuminating Soul Realm, but why is his pagoda stronger than ours? There's no way he could have done that. He must have cheated. If they were in the real world, they could just repress their anger and submit to this unfair situation they were facing. After all, there could be nothing they could do to defeat Zen unless they wanted to commit suicide. In the magic array, however, they wouldn't really die. Thus, they could attack Zen without the fear of dying, which they did without any hesitation. Kill this cheater. Let's attack him together. He can't defend himself from all of us. The World Commercial Alliance must have helped him. For sure he cheated. That's unfair. As they rushed towards Zen, the archers from their level 10 pagodas also raised their bows and began shooting mysterious ice arrows at Zen. Zoom. There were 10 archers on every level 10 pagoda. There were over 100 archers from the furious participants' pagodas who started shooting at Zen simultaneously. Every shot from an archer on a level 10 pagoda had the same power as an all-out attack from a cultivator at the middle level of Internal Elixir Realm. So, right now, Zen was facing a power equivalent of over 100 cultivators at that realm. The arrows shot almost filled the sky above Zen. Every arrow had extremely great power. That was starting to shadow on Zen and the weight was becoming heavy for Zen to see. At the face of quite a violent attack, Zen put his game on. He never looked as serious as he was now. He could have defended himself using his level 12 pagoda, but he didn't. He dared not to use his pagoda on his defense. Avoid. Zen controlled his pagoda using his mind and instructed it to move. It did move several thousand feet in just a second and narrowly avoided the rain of arrows. At the same time, Zen commanded his archers to retaliate. Each archer on his pagoda was at the same level as a cultivator of Virtual Tribulation Realm. As Zen instructed, his 12 archers raised their bows in sync. The cultivators in the magic array were nowhere near the level of Zen's pagoda and his bowmen. Hence, the pagoda was an invincible rival to these cultivators. Zoom. 12 shining arrows started shooting out from Zen's pagoda. They had much stronger momentum than the ones aimed at Zen. With their speed, it was almost impossible to avoid them. Boom. The arrows immediately exploded as they hit their targets. Instantly, 12 participants who were after Zen vanished. Not only did they fail the test, but they also missed their chances to advance to the main contest. Amazing. He knocked down that many participants in one blow. Upon seeing the unfortunate fate that the 12 participants faced, the rest of the participants could only lower their hands in disappointment. They realized that it was just too impossible to defeat Zen even if they attacked simultaneously. As per the rules of the second stage, a participant could get his rival's points by destroying their pagodas. With this, Zen glanced at his pagoda and saw the number of his points on it was increasing dramatically. He smiled triumphantly. Out of 22 participants in the second stage, Zen had already destroyed 16 pagodas. If Zen wanted, he could easily knock out all the other participants and occupy the 3 places to the main draw match all by himself. But, obviously, there was no need for him to do that. Wait, I'm from the Violet Luster sect, a leading grade 3 sect. Think about it, if you dare to knock me out, you'll become an enemy of our sect. A cultivator in a purple robe shouted at Zen. But just after he finished those words, a shining arrow shot out from Zen's pagoda and wiped him out mercilessly. Zen slyly smiled as if he was enjoying the threat. Like the man who was just recently wiped out, most of the remaining participants were from the grade 3 sects. These grade 3 sects weren't qualified to get a reserved slot to the main draw match by the World Commercial Alliance. Their disciples had to participate in the martial arts contest as independent warriors. So, when they heard the man in purple threaten Zen in the name of his sect, they thought of doing the same. After all, Zen must be like them, afraid of the wrath of other disciples from grade 3 sects. However, they didn't expect that Zen would not hesitate to knock him out. It was as if Zen intentionally did it to challenge the whole sect. They were even surprised that Zen didn't care about the Violet Luster sect at all. Maybe he didn't know about Violet Luster sect. But that one was also impossible. After all, the Violet Luster sect was a leading grade 3 sect. It was only one step away from being a grade 4 sect like Bloodwood Cliff and mysterious Luna Hall. Your threats are useless, Zen announced in a cold voice. Now, why don't we continue? The other 2 participants who will be part of the top 3 shall be decided by me. So, what can you offer in exchange for a slot? What, you want to sell the qualification to the main draw match? That's too unreasonable, the other participants protested loudly with darkened faces. They had never thought that Zen would use his position as an advantage. Though they didn't like it, some of them were already thinking about what to offer in exchange for the spot. Zen was already assured of a spot in the top 3 after he defeated the other 16 participants. They thought that Zen would just stand aside as they fought with each other for the other 2 spots. However, Zen had surprised them once again when he offered to auction off the 2 remaining spots. They now believed that a conspiracy was happening in the contest. But instead of getting mad at Zen, they could only curse the World Commercial Alliance, which they believed manipulated the contest. Zen's action nearly put Cole's nose out of joint when the latter saw that scene through the picture slab. He had never seen such an unreasonable act in their tests. Cole thought to himself, what does this guy think our test is? A place to profit from? He shows no respect to our World Commercial Alliance at all. Michael was also flabbergasted with Zen's action. He turned to Letitia with a forced smile. I must say, I'm surprised to see how creative he is by auctioning off the remaining spots. But, is he really this desperate to get the money? Doesn't he get enough from you? A faint smile crossed Letitia's face as she watched the calm look on Zen's face. She didn't answer Michael's question. Besides, Michael wouldn't believe even if she told him how rich Zen really was. Although Letitia herself wasn't sure how rich Zen actually was, she had a guess when the latter casually gave her 1 drop of genuine dragon blood. I won't force you. If you don't want it, then fine. But I have to tell you, I'm not a very patient person, Zen said impatiently. He could just easily wipe out all the other participants with a wave of his hand. His arrows could easily knock them down, but he chose to give them a chance. At a distance from him, 2 cultivators at the middle level of Internal Elixir Realm were busy communicating with each other by sending messages with life vitality. They had already noted Zen's presence when he came to the test venue, but they had ignored him. Besides, what could one expect from a cultivator at level 3 of Illuminating Soul Realm? But their ignorance and arrogance brought them all to a situation they could no longer escape. What should we do? What about trying to kill him with all our strength? We have a chance of winning if we all launch an all-out attack at the same moment. One of them said with confidence. His companion shook his head slightly and replied, each archer on his pagoda has the same power as a cultivator of Virtual Tribulation Realm. Even if we try our best, there is only 20% possibility that we can succeed. It isn't worth a try. He is very decisive, and he shows no hesitation even when he hears about the Violet Luster sect. It's useless to threaten him with our sect. What should we do now? Let's compromise with him first. He might be a very promising talent. We can stifle him in the cradle if we encounter him in the main draw match. A hint of cruelty flashed in their eyes as they exchanged glances. One of them then bowed to Zen with cupped hands and said, "Please wait a minute." Zen was growing impatient, but he had to give them a chance. He turned to them and said with a sarcastic smile, "Tell me, have you made up your mind? What are you offering?" The man pointed at his companion and explained, "We both come from the Platonist sect. If you give the other 2 places to us, we'll pay you 50 Supreme Life Vitality crystals each. How do you like it?" Zen looked around with disappointment and said loudly, 50 Supreme crystals for a place in the main draw match. Any more bids? 1 Supreme Life Vitality crystal was equal to 1 million low-grade Life Vitality crystals, hence 50 Supreme crystals were already a large amount of money even to a cultivator of internal elixir realm. So, the participants were surprised when they sensed that Zen wasn't thrilled at all. Meanwhile, in the palace, Cole almost hit the ceiling. Goodness. Is this really happening? Is he really holding an auction? Letitia's lips curled into a smile. An auction, how creative. Isn't that very interesting? Chapter 462, Avoiding. The Platonist sect was also a third-grade sect. But more importantly, it was located right next to a mine rich with Supreme Life Vitality crystals, which placed it at a great advantage compared to other third-grade sects. The 2 intimidating martial artists from the Platonist sect were prepared to shell out 50 Supreme crystals right there and then to obtain the slots. They wanted to avoid the bidding entirely. After Zen's onslaught, there were only 7 combatants left, including Zen himself. A blanket of silence fell upon the magic array, which was almost empty. Suddenly someone arose from his little pagoda and offered a price, 80 Supreme crystals. The booming voice came from none other than Owen, the only martial artist who was in the illuminating soul realm aside from Zen in today's pre-qualifying match. Owen was visibly upset. He assumed that given his current strength, he would surely meet the quota for the main draw match. He had never expected Zen to appear in such a crucial moment. Owen speculated that his chances of winning against Zen were very slim, maybe 30%. When Zen was striking at him, he desperately wanted to counter. Several whirls of sharp gale winds were circling his hands. But he finally gave up on the idea. His chances were minuscule. Zen was stronger than the level 3 he appeared to be. The timing was perfect. If Supreme crystals could solve his problems, all the better. Owen was rich in nothing but Supreme crystals. It all stemmed from a fortunate accident back when he was training himself in the woolen grassland. He fell into a cave as he lost his footing and by chance found an exorbitant amount of lost treasure kept secret by a now extinct sect. And so even as an independent martial artist, Owen was wealthier than the 2 from the Platonist sect. Dismay marked the sullen faces of the Platonist sect martial artists when they heard Owen's bid. Things always started to turn complicated once the first bid was struck. 100 Supreme crystals, an irritated voice resounded. It came from one of the martial artists from the Platonist sect. His teeth were clenched hard. A disciple's income normally wasn't high. Even when one accomplished a quest given out by the sect, it would still share a portion of the reward. 100 Supreme crystals were all they would offer at the moment. 150, Owen declared in a stern voice, his heart beating rapidly in his chest. The 2 disciples from Platonist sect looked at each other at that moment. Then they proceeded to discuss using their life vitality so that no one else could hear. One of them shook his head and muttered, "I give up." One of the Platonist sect disciples gave up while the other got a spot worth 100 Supreme crystals. Zen smiled gently and then nodded, "You have the spot now. Please take an oath by your will of martial arts. And turn over the Supreme crystals after you leave the magic array." Words were cheap and promises were easily made. If they refused to honor their word, then there was nothing Zen could do about it. "It's just some crystals. There is really no need to," replied the disciple from Platonist sect. "If you don't swear the oath by your will of martial arts, then there's nothing left for us to discuss," said Zen passively. Hidden underneath his words was a thinly veiled threat. Finally Owen and the disciple from the Platonist sect had to swear at the same time. After they were sworn in, there was a flash of consent in Zen's eyes. All of a sudden, the 12 archers beside him drew their long bows at the same time. The sound of the whistling ranted through the air as the arrows cut through the wind. Though the rest of the martial artists fought for their lives, they were still slain by the arrows let loose by the archers of the virtual tribulation realm. After the attack, there were only 3 martial artists left on the magic array: Zen, Owen and that lone disciple of the Platonist sect. When Letitia noticed that the pre-qualifying match was about to end, a strange and complex feeling in her heart intensified. Although she was here for Zen, she suddenly didn't want to be seen, let alone let Zen know she was there. So she smiled joyfully and turned to Michael and the others, "Since the test is over, I'm going to leave. But I have a favor to ask of you. Please don't tell Zen I was here." Upon hearing the strange favor, Michael and Xiao looked confused. They wondered why Letitia, the leader of Cloud Hall, tried to hide something from Zen, a mere disciple. Gazed upon by Michael and Xiao, Letitia's cheeks turned a scarlet hue. Michael and Xiao got even more confused when they saw her reddened face. Letitia managed to fake a smile and said, "I'll leave you to it then." She wheeled around and trotted swiftly out of the palace. Michael, Xiao, and Cole didn't have a clue what just happened. After a few moments, the martial artists that went into the magic array all started to come out and enter the palace. Among the 400 who entered, only 3 managed to have a spot in the main draw match, making the elimination rate skyrocket. Most of the martial artists were eliminated by the magic array itself. Only 20 were eliminated because of Zen's little pagoda. All 20 eyed him with great hatred. If the elders of the World Commercial Alliance weren't present, Zen probably would have been torn to pieces. However, Zen remained calm under their hateful gaze. He even had the nerve to smile. Owen walked up to Zen and threw him a bag of supreme crystals, so did the Platinus sect disciple. After all, they had sworn by their will of martial arts. It was not worthwhile to be bothered by an internal demon just for some supreme crystals. Most of the martial artists present didn't even know what they were doing, since they had no clue as to what transpired on the second stage of the test. Cole watched Zen getting his bounty as his head ached. He wanted to cancel Zen's qualification desperately, but Letitia would definitely put him in trouble if he went and did it. More importantly, he lacked the reasons to do so. If Letitia truly wanted to reason with the World Commercial Alliance, he would definitely be in trouble. Though Cole was extremely unhappy with what Zen had done, he could do nothing but let it go. The 3 who passed the pre-qualifying match are Zen Luo, Owen Ao, and Galloway Fu. They have won the pass to the main draw match, and other warriors can receive a reward from the World Commercial Alliance. There were apparently talents among the independent martial artists as well. The martial arts contest was an opportunity for the World Commercial Alliance to win them over. Unlike the Cloud Hall and the Ethereal Spirit sect, the World Commercial Alliance actually took them in, instead of establishing a sect to train disciples. Zen breathed a sigh of relief after he got the qualification. Though there was still time before the main draw match, Zen didn't rest. He went into the Oracle City and bought some necessary supplies and materials. He then rented a nice quiet room and stayed there to meditate, instead of going back to the Cloud Hall. Zen threw himself into cultivating or drawing divine texture these days. He had to be prepared to kill Marilyn. Though he had never met Marilyn, he knew she was in the middle of the internal elixir realm. Killing her would be his greatest challenge yet. Furthermore, Marilyn had purple power body, which was an extremely rare and special power. Marilyn was also trained by Eddie, the most powerful man in the central region. Zen didn't know if Marilyn ever became a formal student of his, but he was sure she learned a lot under Eddie. Zen faced the critical challenge head-on, unflinching. He had to go all out in this fight. It took Zen a whole day to complete 2 pieces of divine texture. They were all drawn under the Cyan Dragon's requirements and the divine textures were finally inscribed on both of his arms, then they promptly faded into 2 dim lines of power. The 2 pieces of divine texture were like glowing tattoos on his arms as they were activated. Zen began cultivating even more as soon as he was done with the divine texture. No more than 2 days later, Zen had finally stepped into level 4 of the Illuminating Soul Realm all the way from level 3. His primary task had always been to gather more strength and further hone his might. Right after he leveled up, the Cyan Dragon's voice rang out, "Zen, I'm ready to awaken my 7th brother." Chapter 463, The Primordial Energy. The Cyan Dragon's 7th brother was one of the 9 dragons. Back in the city of the genuine dragon world, the Cyan Dragon had been successful in swallowing the owl beast's evil spirit. That evil spirit was divided into 3 parts. Those 3 parts, according to the Cyan Dragon, were extremely useful. One could be used to cure the Cyan Dragon itself, the other could be used to wake up his 7th brother, and the third could help Zen with the creation of the Soul Seed. It was a long time before the Cyan Dragon came up with the decision to finally wake his 7th brother. Zen, however, was patient and waited respectfully for the Cyan Dragon. Now, he sat cross-legged and immersed himself in the silence. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, Zen slipped into a deep, meditative state. During this time, his mind relaxed and his soul was able to enter into the depths of his psyche. Zen found the cyan dragon coil around the huge mysterious furnace. At first glance, the dragon looked fearsome and scary. However, his fierce look softened once he realized who the visitor was. Uncoiling himself from the furnace, the cyan dragon approached Zen and opened his jaw wide. In his mouth was a huge, black bead. That's the black bead from the owl beast's evil spirit, isn't it? Zen asked. The cyan dragon nodded. He confirmed. After absorbing the owl beast's evil spirit, my body became much stronger. Hopefully, I can also wake my brother up with this bead. Having said that, the cyan dragon spat out the bead. Both he and Zen watched as the black bead flew over their heads and towards the dragon-shaped sculptures on the surface of the mysterious furnace. It shot itself right into the gaping mouth of one of the dragons. As soon as the bead touched the dragon's mouth, it transformed into some kind of viscous dark matter quite similar to the soul essence refined by the dark devil phantom. However, it seemed much purer than the soul essence. Once the dark matter was swallowed into the dragon's mouth, everything became quiet. One of the reasons why Zen was willing to risk the destruction of his own soul to help the cyan dragon in capturing the owl beast's evil spirit was that the dragon's brother had the capacity to refine his body. However, they'd have to wake him up first. Body refining skills were not very popular in the central region. All the sects and warriors preferred and practiced the refining techniques of the life vitality system. Only a few people refined their bodies, so there were very few body refining techniques. If they succeeded in waking up the cyan dragon's brother, he could help Zen refine his body and considerably enhance his effectiveness in combat. The dragon statue remained still while Zen and the cyan dragon patiently waited with rapt attention. Surely the owl beast's evil spirit was enough. They had risked so much to obtain it. It must be, no, it had to be enough. Seconds passed. The clock was ticking, but nothing was changing from the ornament. A period of 30 seconds passed. The silence was deafening and it shattered whatever hope Zen and the cyan dragon had. After so much trouble and expectations, all of it only led to failure. Zen's and the cyan dragon's faces fell with disappointment. The black bead from the owl beast's evil spirit hadn't been enough to awaken the dragon. However, just as all hope had been eradicated in their hearts, the dragon statue suddenly began to shake. "Be brother," the cyan dragon murmured, eyes shining with hope. A wisp of red began to appear on the petrified dragon statue, staining the stone with the hope of awakening. Crack. As the red bled through the statue, multiple cracks began to appear. One by one, the pieces of debris fell away to reveal the grand beast underneath. The red dragon, one of the 9 dragons, had finally awakened. The dragon raised his head in slight bewilderment. "Where am I?" he asked in a rough, hoarse voice. "Brother," the cyan dragon greeted his newly awakened sibling. "It's me." The red dragon cautiously uncoiled from the mysterious furnace. "Little brother," the red dragon called. Familiarity was written over his face as he slowly glided down the furnace towards the cyan dragon. "Are you the one who woke me up from my slumber?" he asked as he stopped in front of the cyan dragon. Slowly, the memories that had long been frozen in time were rapidly coming back to the red dragon. The red dragon could now remember perfectly. His memories were no longer in a haze. The cyan dragon nodded in response. "Yes," he replied, "my ability is very limited. There are things that are beyond my comprehension, so I opted to wake you up," he added. The red dragon knotted his brows. "What do you mean?" he asked. The cyan dragon started talking in a language that Zen had never heard before. It was the dragon's language. Zen wasn't able to catch anything as the 2 dragon brothers began to converse in rapid dragon language. The syllables were too complex, but he had no doubt that the cyan dragon was now telling his brother all that he had missed while in slumber. As the 2 conversed, the red dragon began to look Zen up and down. Despite being uneasy, Zen never showed it. Instead, he stared back at the dragon and coolly turned his head towards the fire that was lit on the furnace. The red dragon caught Zen's attention back when he laughed. "Human, did you really turn yourself into a spiritual weapon?" he asked with amusement dancing in his eyes. "Yes," Zen replied with eagerness and pride as an answer to the dragon's question. However, he was confused as to what the dragon found amusing. "There are billions, heck, even trillions of creatures in this universe," the red dragon said, "but nowhere will you be able to find such a unique and valuable body as yours. You actually use the primordial energy you produced during the refinement of your body to wash your belly. What were you thinking?" The red dragon shook his head at Zen, obviously disappointed but also slightly amused. Zen's brows knitted. "The primordial energy," he repeated, shooting a confused look at the red dragon. The red dragon frowned. Didn't my brother tell you? Your body is the rudiment of primordial energy. The red dragon's declaration echoed in his ears. It's quite a pity you don't know how to use it at all. Truly a pity, the dragon started. After you stepped into the nature level, you had to practice the refinement techniques of the life vitality system, so you just wasted the primordial energy away, the mighty dragon began in a low, cold voice. You do not know how to use that energy, so you cleansed your body by using that energy. The dragon said, heaving a sigh in disappointment. I bet you have no actual idea how precious it truly is. The dragon stated lastly. What? Zen was shocked with the sudden knowledge he had gained. He didn't know, and if he knew, he wouldn't have used it. The dragons were the supreme beings of the universe. They had power and authority over anything. They could even be considered as gods of this world. If the cyan dragon and the red dragon hadn't gotten into such a plight, the possibility of them destroying the universe with one wave of their claws was not far from reality. The world and the central region would be in utter devastation. But thankfully, they did not cause such a ruckus. The mighty dragon valued the primordial energy, but at first, Zen used it to cleanse his body only. Moreover, after becoming a nature creature, he didn't practice body refining skills, so he used the primordial energy to wash the body, but unfortunately the effect was not satisfactory. Zen's mouth was agape, left speechless by the revelation. He couldn't fathom out what to say or what to do. He was dumbfounded and lost on what should be done next. However, I have heard from my brother that you woke me up at the cost of your life, and for that, I owe you. To pay my debt, I can teach you body refining skills. But let me warn you. I have never supported human body refining. But your body is unique. It will be a waste not to refine it. The only question left is, will you be able to do it? The red dragon asked in an emotionless voice. The genuine dragon world had many humans in it, but most of them were dragon lineage humans with dragon blood. These humans who had dragon blood in their bodies were far stronger and superior than a normal human being when it came to body refining skills. But normal human beings were naturally suitable for the practice of life vitality system, and that included the refinement of the body. A lot of them at first opted to refine their bodies. However, the most powerful people relied on the life vitality system since it could lengthen a lifespan. Zen's eyes shone with determination as he held the dragon's gaze. I won't give up, no matter how difficult it is. Giving up wasn't an option for Zen, especially since he still wanted to rescue his sister. He might have been strong, but it was not enough to protect Yan. She got taken away from his care in just an instant. Other than that, a part of him also wanted to pursue the consummate martial arts. He had to make himself stronger until he reached the absolute peak. Impressive, the red dragon said. That's a good start. You'll need your strongest conviction. Your determination and the strength of your body are needed for you to succeed with me. Let's start with refining your body, the dragon added. Refine my body? Zen asked curiously. I have reached the nature level by refining my body. Before reaching the nature level, there was a need for warriors to practice body refining skills in order to remove the impurities in their bodies. They had to refine their skin, flesh, bones, organs, and marrows in the exact succession. Back in the day, Zen had used the precious primordial energy to force out the impurities within his body. After reaching the nature level, the primordial energy in your body does not work at all. Except for a small part that has now disappeared, the rest of it continues to flow and spread all throughout your body. You often wash the belly with it, so it is concentrated there. I will use it to refine your body first. Forget the body refining you knew before. The red dragon was obviously against the body refining skills of the eastern region where Zen had practiced. I'm skeptical about it, since it is quite pathetic. The dragon wanted to add while talking to Zen, but he shoved the idea away since it was not worth to be commented on. Zen knew that the red dragon viewed the purple light fist he had learned before as complete trash, and he was perfectly okay with it. The warm currents he felt after he was beaten earlier were exactly his primordial energy, but he didn't use it well. After he reached the nature level, the warm currents generated after he was beaten were the primordial energy he never used. Over time, he had built up a considerable amount of primordial energy. Now, the red dragon was fully intended on using it to refine his body. I am warning you once again. The refinement will be very painful and hard. I advise you to be prepared for it, the dragon warned before Zen could quit his meditation. Zen's soul just nodded as an acknowledgement. He was prepared for whatever it was going to take. As the brave warrior came back from his reverie, he squinted his eyes slowly and shook his head. He breathed once more to fully restore his consciousness. After that, he decided to step out and into the courtyard. The martial arts contest was held nearby, so the rent of the courtyard he was in was very expensive. However, it was cheap for him since he had hundreds of supreme life vitality crystals to spend. He rented the whole courtyard that day, so no one could be seen aside from him wandering around that place. Standing in the middle of the space, he heard the red dragon began to speak. I shall now commence with refining your body using the primordial energy. As soon as he finished his words, Zen felt his entire body become rigid. Chapter 464, The Fate to Lead the World of Chaos. The warm current, as Zen named it, felt like the warm caress of the summer seas. He had no idea what it was, nor had any explanation for why it healed him from any pain felt by his body. He didn't have any inkling as to what this energy coursing through him might possibly be. An enigma, Zen thought, a faint smile gracing his lips. One that I'm willing to embrace wholeheartedly. The thirst for knowledge to solve this mystery spurred Zen into training his body without mercy. His resolve and dedication had led him to be inflicted with various wounds and injuries all over, yet all these never seemed to last for long as soon as the warm current washed over him. It's another type of energy. One that I obviously haven't heard before. Zen had mused before, his brows furrowing in frustration as he attempted to resolve his own inquiries. Primordial energy, Zen murmured as he finally knew what the warm current was after the red dragon told him. The red dragon had helped to muster and run the primordial energy in his body. It started with the smallest flicker of flame, a fire that could easily be extinguished by sudden gusts of wayward winds. It was too sudden, too fast, that Zen didn't even have the chance to recognize where and when the shift had begun inside of him. The flame flickered and spread all throughout his body like wildfire in a dense forest. It left no mercy, reaching every crevice and fissure in his compact body, until it engulfed him completely. He thought that he could bear it. He thought of the summer seas, crashing waves and the salt lingering on his tongue. The warm caress that seemed to embrace him lovingly and healed him every time his body took damage. And, at first, he felt it, the careful, tender touch. Until, the heat grew and he was choking, unable to breathe as the heat increased in devastatingly high levels. It scorched him from the inside out. Every intake of oxygen became synonymous to burning acid sliding down his parched throat. He was being burned alive, his skin turning to black as his muscles convulsed, fighting a hopeless battle against the fire that relentlessly licked at his flesh. No, stop, Zen screamed in despair, trashing wildly and blindly. He hated it, he hated this, hated that he was unable to do anything against the force that was trying to bring him down. He hated that he had no chance at all to alleviate his suffering. He had been determined to fight back, no matter how small the chances of success were in a battle, but here, he was robbed of all power. The pain didn't cease, only intensified and worsened to such a degree that his blood felt like boiling water. He was trapped in hellfire, with no possible way out. He was helpless, utterly and completely helpless. Oracle City had begun preparing for the martial arts contest, an event that was widely known and praised by people from all towns and nations. Meaning, it also became a leeway for merchants and landlords alike to profit off such a huge opportunity. From wares and food to inns and houses for rent, it became nothing short of a massive festival for small and large businesses. The house Zen had rented was one of the abandoned properties that had only opened due to the event. It was simple and modest, as it was owned by an ordinary family. The only problem was that its location was disadvantageous to most because of its inaccessibility. Nevertheless, Zen took the liberty to live inside its quarters for the time being. The owner's family lived next to the rented house, and ran a jade and jewelry shop on the side after securing a better location on the main street. In their previous years, they had tried to scout tourists into checking in their old home, but it was always met to no avail. They were ready to accept that this year would be of no difference, having decided on labeling it as a futile attempt to raise quick money. Yet, this man, a cultivator, and an excellent one at that, approached them with the intention of renting out their former estate. Cultivators were a kindred that possessed unimaginable skills and powers. To ordinary folks like the owner, they were a species that were closely regarded as fairies or gods. And so, it was also with great reverence and awe when the owner had told his family to never dare approach the rented house, in fear of bothering the young man occupying their past home. It had been a quiet few days, since the cultivator had been living peacefully as their esteemed neighbor. However, this coming night seemed to be the long-awaited exception. A sudden roar, and the following crash of tiles from the adjacent backyard shocked the owner's family into stillness. With pale faces and trembling hands, the feeling of unrest that settled on the household led the group to huddle close to each other in fear and terror. Unbeknownst to them though, a particular girl in a flowing green dress took the loud noise as an opportunity to spy on the house next door. She stacked a pile of tiles on top of the other to make up for her lack of height, and peeped over the neighbor's yard. A man in white, I wonder if that's part of his training, she thought, after taking notice of the youth writhing on the ground. He was covered in dirt and grime from his yard, a stark contrast to the white of his clothes. He's the cultivator, isn't he? The girl muttered to herself, her eyes transfixed on the man who seemed to be under some unbearable pain. Her inquisitive nature was understandable, it was a feeling that the majority could relate to. The people of the Oracle City mostly led normal, ordinary lives, just like other towns and places. Excluding the occasional flying chariots or cultivators in the sky, one would rarely have an opportunity to meet and much less know any cultivators. It might be because of this fact, that the hunger to observe such an unusual being, won over any fear the girl must have felt upon experiencing the unfamiliar. She was eager to drink up whatever she could take from the view over the wall. Yes, she certainly was, until she had a nagging realization that what she was currently seeing was simply beyond her expectations. The more she watched the scene in front of her, the more horrified and repulsed she felt upon seeing the cultivator withstand such suffering just for the sake of training. His voice was hoarse from his screams. The pain from the activation of primordial energy was unexpected for Zen, so he was totally unprepared for it. He had no concept of time while he was stuck in the realm of torture. He didn't know how many minutes, or hours he had already spent enclosed in this prison of searing fire. He convulsed, tossing himself widely and violently on the ground, like fish desperately looking for water, looking desperately for the briefest amount of solace, as his mind fought to escape intolerable abuse of the white-hot flames. He's tougher than I have imagined, the red dragon said in barely concealed astonishment. His soul has entered the fighting soul realm, so he is able to withstand it for a long while before he passes out, the cyan dragon replied. That's it, it would actually be his salvation if he were to pass out. This kind of torture is undeniably unbearable. The red dragon shook his head in a pitying manner. Although, it is true that one must always go through a series of hardships if he hopes to achieve his goal. Zen must understand what he is putting at stake for the future he will be facing soon. Pang! The dragons turned to see where the resounding boom had originated. It was closely followed by another loud crash, and they soon discerned that it was the sound of something breaking. Zen, in his deranged state, had managed to crush a brown, stone floor tile into pieces after having tossed himself over it. Although, he didn't seem to take notice as he proceeded to stumble and stagger his way across the courtyard deliriously. He was making a huge, chaotic mess. His body appearing to be possessed with the strength of 1,000 soldiers, every accidental bump he had made with the stone pillars caused them to shatter completely. Still, he was blinded by the agony he felt that he was not yet to be made aware of the 3 rooms that had collapsed after he ran into them. The ruckus in the manor made Zen's innocent neighbors cower in fright. The owner had summoned his family members to gather in their shop, and with a quivering voice, he tried to console both himself and his family. Don't worry, the cultivator is only practicing. There's no need to fear. Just remember that no matter what happens, never go to his yard and risk disturbing him. The family all nodded in agreement. They were shaking, trembling so badly that the owner was almost certain that none had been able to even listen to his words properly. It's okay, he reassured himself. My wife is here, so are my children. His eyes swept over the group, before they widened in horror. Alice, where's Alice? She's not here. The room fell silent as everyone looked at each other in dread. They all scattered in a hurry to look for the missing daughter, but ultimately failed to see any sign of her presence within the shop. Oblivious to her family's turmoil, Alice had remained unmoving from her spot, entranced by the unbelievable situation on the other side of the wall. Perhaps, it was the child in her that led her to be so unperturbed by the dangers she was currently exposed to. With a gaze filled with wonder and disbelief, she whispered to herself, "Is that guy really as tough as iron and steel? What's he doing? He's running into walls, and breaking them all to pieces, and he's unharmed. Is that even possible?" She pursed her lips in concentration as she tried to look for any signs of cuts or gashes on the man. Not even a trace of blood. Are all cultivators as invincible as him? A barrage of thunderous noises cut off Alice's musings. Zen rampaged like an angered, blinded bull, sporadically wrecking whatever stood in his path. Despite this, Alice was still foolishly gawking at his strange behavior. That was, until Zen dashed out of the house and ran directly towards her direction. Now, Alice was no fool. She had already harbored suspicions that this young man might not even be sentient, seeing as his conduct might as well label him as an irrational, violent beast. He could easily ram down the wall and crush Alice without a single doubt or hesitation in his mind. She began to panic. Will I be able to react fast? The sound of an enormous force smashing against stones resonated throughout the yard. Alice, in pure, unaltered instinct, miraculously dodged in time before the wall she was leaning against was powdered down by Zen. Through the haze of dust and stone particles covering her vision, she regarded the motionless man lying before her with curious, sparkling eyes. He passed out, Alice murmured, looking at Zen's dirtied face. His twisted expression gradually disappeared as his consciousness slipped, allowing him a break from the torment he had been forced to endure. Alice took a closer look at his face, and saw a young man beneath all the grime that tarnished his otherwise smooth skin. She frowned. Her habit of keeping things clean made her feel peeved and uncomfortable while looking at his dirty face. With that thought in mind, Alice turned around and ran back to her house. Her father felt immense relief flood in his veins after seeing his daughter arrive back home. Alice paid no heed to his father's calls, and instead busied herself in finding the things she was looking for. Mother, where did you put the barrel? I need it to help clean the cultivator's face. The owner paled, realizing what she was planning to do. Alice, we shall not meddle in his business. Her father was afraid, admittedly, as all common people would be. They all feared what they did not understand after all, and so they wished for no involvement or association with the cultivators. Alice was seen as the odd one, what with her fearless attitude in approaching the unconscious man. She returned to where Zen was situated, carrying a barrel of water and several pieces of white cloth with her, before kneeling down and cleaning his face for him. While Alice was occupied with her task, the two dragons in Zen's mind were too caught up in their own conversation to even notice the arrival of the strange girl. Brother, are you sure you're right about your conjecture? The red dragon asked, solemnly. Yes, of course. Zen has the fate to lead the world of chaos. Both his talent and luck demonstrate his growing potential for the position, the cyan dragon nodded as he replied. Our training and cultivation for him will pay off. At any rate, I guarantee that we will lose nothing. The red dragon's face turned graver upon hearing this. The ability to lead the world of chaos not only depends on those two traits. Remember what our oldest brother once said. The one who is destined to lead the world of chaos shall have both characteristics, and the guidance of destiny to go with it. It was a well-known fact, that no matter how much talent and luck one possessed, it was all meaningless if the fate they hoped to achieve was not the one that was carved for them. Many had tried to pave their own trails, and those many had failed. Zen is indeed a genius in the arts of cultivation, and the rare opportunities he has been presented with certainly prove his luck, but I have not seen any signs of the guidance of destiny in his life. The cyan dragon grinned knowingly. Of course you cannot see it. Zen's destiny guider is not here with him right now. Oh, the red dragon pondered as he looked at the other expectantly. Since he awakened earlier than I did, he must know many things, he thought. Zen has a sister named Yan, and I think she is his destiny guider. The cyan dragon said it with a certainty that made it hard not to believe his words. Zen's sole purpose in being here is to save Yan. He encountered various challenges along the way, but he persevered until he was finally able to hold her hand. The cyan dragon said, his salvation was short-lived though because of Yan's purple power body, and thus she was taken away by Eddie in the end. His defeat led him to continuously face obstacles in order to chase after Yan again, and all that made him stronger by leaps and bounds. That is why I think that Yan is Zen's destiny guider. It sounds reasonable, brother. But, I think that it is still too early to be sure of it. If you're right, Zen should have been led into a much wider world, instead of this small central region, the red dragon countered. The other companion agreed with a nod. Indeed, my conclusion is not yet final. If she really is who I suspect to be, she might be taken away by somebody again. Both dragons fell into quiet contemplation before they sighed. If our eldest brother were here, he would have known the answer to our speculations. The red dragon grumbled in dismay. Fate was elusive, akin to traveling a rocky, deserted terrain with no clear destination in sight. Even the most powerful beings like the genuine dragon race were unable to get a hold of the whole picture. Zen's superb abilities and his unusual destiny were first found by Kenneth, but even he knew of nothing about his fate to lead the world of chaos. It was only intuition that led him to believe that Yan played a role in guiding Zen forward. Unfortunately for Zen, he was excluded from the topic regarding his own future, as his consciousness had not yet returned. Zen woke up after a long, much-needed rest. Disoriented and aching all over, the first thing that had come to his senses was the sweet smell of a young girl hovering over him as soon as he opened his eyes. With a throat dry from dehydration, he asked, "Where am I?" Chapter 465, Refining Acupoints. Zen had gotten himself ready to experience the agonizing pain of body refinement, but never would he have thought that it would be extremely intolerable. His soul had already set foot inside the fighting soul realm, and his willpower had also gone up a couple of notches. However, his mind and body just couldn't bear the excruciating pain, causing him to pass out. Holding a freshly brewed pot of hot tea, a girl dressed in green silk entered. Possessing a set of eyes so pure, the girl didn't look half bad at all. Her bangs had been cut short. "Oh, you finally came to." Upon seeing Zen open his eyes, she immediately poured hot tea over a cup and handed it over to him. Zen shot the girl a bit of a reluctant gaze, but it didn't take too long for him to understand that she was just a regular person who had nothing to do with martial arts whatsoever, so he was able to ease up on her in no time. He nodded politely toward the girl, carefully grabbed the cup and gulped a mouthful of refreshing hot tea. "I noticed how your face looked as if you were under so much pain. Would you like for me to fetch a doctor for you?" Although Alice Bai was aware that the bodies of warriors could be quite different from those of the common folk, she still felt like Zen was in need of medical supervision as he had been racked with pain and so much torment. Zen simply let out a faint smile and shook his head in refusal. "No, thanks. That wouldn't be necessary. The doctor wouldn't be able to treat me anyway." "How can you be so sure?" "I know of a talented doctor who has Wang as his last name. His clinic is just around the bend. For decades now, he has been a seasoned doctor. He's the one who used to." Alice Bai remarked in a tender and comprehensible voice. Surprisingly, Zen didn't find her irritating at all. The whole time that the girl was giving her explanation, Zen just silently wore a soft smile on his face. He didn't bother stopping her in her tracks. Instead, he just let her continue. But Alice was quite intuitive. The second she realized that Zen wasn't listening to her, she became quiet, and she just kept staring at Zen. "Well, you made an oath to keep my father's courtyard intact back when you rented it, but you went ahead and laid waste to the rooms and floors inside. I'm gonna have to ask you to pay for the damages." During the time when Zen was receiving training in the courtyard, not a single one among the members of the Bai family had the guts to take a peek. But Alice Bai hadn't been fazed at all, to the point that she even extended a helping hand in cleaning up the mess. Her father used to tell her all the time how a lot of martial artists felt like they were above the law and would go on to rape any girls they might like, but something of Zen told her that he couldn't be one of those wretched types of men. Her father had been heartbroken upon seeing so much destruction in the courtyard, but he was much too afraid to ask Zen to pay for the damages, so Alice decided to come in his stead. Zen suddenly recalled what he had done and realized that he had just wrecked some of the rooms, so he pulled out more than 10 low-grade life vitality crystals stored inside his space ring and handed them over to Alice. Would these life vitality crystals be enough? These were the low-grade life vitality crystals Zen received as change from back when he bought some materials for drawing divine textures. As the sight of more than a dozen low-grade life vitality crystals in Zen's hand, Alice couldn't believe her eyes. Shaking her head repeatedly, she blurted out, "This is a bit too much." An overwhelming gap existed between ordinary people and the warriors. The Bai family could be considered rich in Oracle City. However, the gold they allotted for food consumption and clothing throughout the year wouldn't even be worth more than 1, or possibly 2 low-grade life vitality crystals. Half a low-grade life vitality crystal would actually be more than enough already to fix the damages to the rooms and walls. The low-grade life vitality crystals Zen offered was such a large amount of money for the Bai family no matter how one might look at it. If Alice's father were to find out that Alice even tried to refuse, he would be raging with intense anger. But Zen insisted and placed the low-grade life vitality crystals in Alice's hands. Alice was sincerely so hesitant to accept it, but pondering on it, this could make her father so happy, so she gladly left holding the crystals in her hands. The second she walked away, she informed Zen that she'd bring dinner over to him when night fell. Immediately after Alice left, Zen sprung up from his bed. It seemed that luck wasn't on his side, as he hit his head on the wooden ceiling. OWW! Zen cried out under intense pain. Hearing the clamor, Alice hurriedly went back and poked her head through the door's opening, feeling quite curious. Zen rubbed his head in embarrassment. He simply laughed it off and said, "Sorry about that. I'll make sure to pay for anything I might break." In the past, Zen had always been under the assumption that the warm current could only be able to help him get rid of the impurities inside his body. The first step one would have to take in order to reach the nature level was to get rid of the impurities in his body and make it absolutely pure. Upon attaining the nature level, however, the aforementioned warm current had little to almost no effect on him whatsoever. It wasn't until today that he finally learned how to utilize the primordial energy. This was something essential for training one's body refining skills. Subsequently, after the red dragon lent him a hand in refining his body with the use of the primordial energy, his body went through a mind-blowing transformation. The moment he sprung up from the bed, there was a sensation rushing through his body, brimming with an unfamiliar force which seemed to be different from life vitality. He somehow knew there was something within him, but he just didn't know how to draw it out. That was the reason he accidentally hit the ceiling surprisingly when he jumped up. It looks like you've managed to form your own forceful energy right on your very first body refining. The primordial energy is quite powerful in my opinion. Ha ha, the voice of the red dragon appeared without a warning. Did you just say, forceful energy? Zen's eyes were gleaming with anticipation. This is what people commonly refer to as a martial art of body refining, the red dragon affirmed. The system of body refinement and that of life vitality refinement were two utterly contrasting fields of martial arts. The two might have started with body refining, but after the 5 realms of body refining, they would branch out much differently. With that in mind, the warriors of the life vitality system should logically begin training from the nature level, and then the illuminating soul realm, and the internal elixir realm after that, and eventually, they'd reach the virtual tribulation realm and even much higher levels. That being said, after finishing their practice in the 5 realms of body refining, the warriors adopting the body refining system would have to begin the refinement of their 108 acupuncture points, or acupoints for short. The next step would then be to build an indestructible body, succeeded by the 8 path platforms, and then finally, the 9 divine stars. The body refining system is truly an enormous training system, much more perfect as opposed to the life vitality refining system. If you're interested in improving your martial arts and refining your body at the same time, you would have to put in more work and train harder than every other warrior out there before you could accomplish anything. Given that you have already undergone body refining, by now, you should be well aware just how grueling this road could be, the red dragon mentioned carefully. Well, I know that full well, Zen responded in a calm manner. Because this was the path he decided to take, there was no way he'd ever hesitate to move forward no matter how hard it was. Noticing that Zen looked just the same as he usually was, the red dragon exclaimed, "That's great. I was a bit anxious that you might not be adamant enough before. If you could somehow pull off practicing martial arts and refining your body simultaneously, you'll have the potential of becoming a dominator in some field one day and end up producing wonderful accomplishments." From what I could tell, the warriors who practice martial arts and refine their bodies are significantly stronger than their peers, so much so that they could be beyond compare. I think you're more than prepared enough, so let's proceed. Ha ha. Proceed. Zen's eyelids quivered after he heard the red dragon's statement. What I just did was refine your body. You could think of it as transforming life energy into life vitality when you were practicing the life vitality system. Now, I'm going to start refining your acupoints. Normally, the power of thunder and fire will have to be used for this purpose. You didn't put into practice the cultivation methods of thunder or fire system, but as luck would have it, you have been baptized by the laws, so you have the basic understanding of the first layer of the laws of fire and thunder. Nothing could be better than utilizing pure thunder and fire to refine acupuncture points, the red dragon explained. Upon hearing all of that, Zen came to realize that his body refining was just at an early stage, quite like the nature level of life vitality refining. He had just started to refine life vitality back when he entered the nature level. For that reason, he went back to the courtyard and sat cross-legged. A flame materialized right in front of him. The flame was rather small and seemed to possess insignificant power, but it was exceptionally pure, much like a dancing flame spirit. Meanwhile, a bolt of lightning also popped up in front of him. The lightning was sparkling with blue light, akin to that of the light of the flawless sapphire. And it was dancing as well. Under the guidance of the red dragon, the flame and the lightning bolt in front of Zen suddenly intertwined, darting toward his eyebrows. That was one of the main acupoints in the human body, the 20th point on the governing vessel. Zen's body began quivering after the flame and lightning darted into his first acupoint. Then, beads of sweat began to form, streaming down from his forehead. The refining of acupoints was as painful as body refining, but, in contrast, body refining caused severe pain in every single part of the human body, while the pain of refining acupoints, on the other hand, was focused in just one point. The pure flame and lightning continued spreading on his eyebrows, making him feel as though his eyebrows were about to burst. The strength of his will had been put to the test at such a great extent at that moment. In spite of the fact that the flame and lightning came from his own understanding of the fire law and the thunder law, at that point in time, they were being refined in his eyebrows. It would spell trouble for him if he carelessly allowed them to slip into his mind, so he simply couldn't allow himself to lose focus. Chapter 466, The Opening. Zen breathed in deeply, but remained calm as he felt the flame and the lightning racing through him. The powerful flame and lightning gathered in the central area of Zen's head. He was refined through lightning and fire, which made the 20th point on his governing vessel glow with a golden light. After an hour, the shimmering light vanished, and Zen was done refining his first acupoint. Body refiners were rare in the central region, but it didn't mean that there were none. Some of the smaller sects in the area had disciples dedicated to body refining. When they finished the marrow refining level, they refined the first acupoint, which was the 20th point on the governing vessel. But, the process usually took years, even decades to complete. Zen finished in an hour. His impressive accomplishment would shame and amaze those body refiners who were stuck. There was a myriad of reasons that enabled Zen to finish so fast. First, Zen's body was a spiritual weapon, making him stronger than other cultivators. Also, he had already refined himself in other aspects when he got the primordial energy. Primordial energy was accessible for Zen because all he needed to do was be beaten by others. According to the Red Dragon, though, it could be challenging to get primordial energy for some more sophisticated, stronger masters. Since his body was refined by primordial energy completely, Zen was able to refine his acupoints more effectively. The flame and lightning were law power, which was the purest power. Body refiners from the central region underwent numerous hardships before they gained flame and lightning power that was suitable for their acupoint refining. Even when they did get some, it wasn't as pure as what Zen got. Usually, the flame and lightning from the earth realm were more explosive and more difficult to control. As a result, it required them to be more careful than Zen. They would be risking life and limb if they did what Zen did, and combined the flame with the lightning directly into their acupoints. Once he finished with the first point, Zen began refining the next acupoint. An hour later, his temples were refined. Then he refined the next acupoint, which was located in the forehead. Then the acupoints beside the ears, and the acupoints beside the eyebrows. Time passed as Zen refined each acupoint. Oracle City skyline was alight with the hues of orange as the sun sank lower and then gradually darkened the sky. The most important event happening in Oracle City was the martial arts contest, and there were so many refiners that the city was bursting at the seams. There were always arguments that transgressed into battles when there were cultivators, so, the World Commercial Alliance assigned more officers to patrol the streets. Off in the distance, mist hung heavy, shrouding Letitia as she leaned against the rooftop. She looked stunning in her long, light blue dress. The wind caught it, and as it billowed around her, it gave Letitia an ethereal air. Unbelievable, he's refining his acupoints, and so fast, too. Even in the fog, the surprise on Letitia's face was evident. Just then, a girl wearing a jade green skirt and carrying a basket walked into the yard and approached Zen. The girl was Alice, and she was bringing a meal made by the finest chefs in the city that her father, who had made his fortune by accepting Zen's low-grade life vitality crystals, hired to impress Zen. "Dinner's ready," announced Alice, beaming at Zen. It wasn't tough for Zen to finish refining the 108 points quickly since he had more primordial energy. After spending the entire afternoon refining his acupoints, Zen was famished. Alice opened the basket, took out the dishes and handed them to Zen one at a time. While this was happening, Letitia stared at Zen unwaveringly. Alice might not be from an influential family, but with her pretty face, she stood out. Letitia was much more beautiful. Even so, seeing the two of them sharing a meal, made her envious. As a cultivator, Letitia was dedicated to reaching the martial art community's pinnacle. Being responsible for Cloud Hall wore her out, and at one point she considered settling down. But, she was driven to keep refining her skills and reaching for the next level. But, she was also a woman, with feelings, wants and needs, and once in a while, Letitia wanted to take a break from the rigorous routine, and just enjoy a peaceful moment with someone else. As Zen bit into the fish, he sensed something. Perhaps it was Letitia's emotions that drew his gaze to the house where she stood. Is it my imagination? Wondered Zen. He froze, and the hairs on his neck raised. He had the distinct impression someone was watching him. Is something wrong? Are you choking on a fishbone? The bones in a Channa Argus are really sharp. Alice asked hurriedly, her eyes widening with concern. As soon as Zen heard Alice's question, he burst into laughter at the idea of a man like him choking on a fishbone. After he finished the dinner, Zen started refining his acupoints again. Using the power of the flames and lightning, Zen refined his acupoints one after another. Each time he was a little more efficient and quicker. 4 days later, Zen was done refining all of his acupoints. After that, he went into Oracle City to buy mysterious weapons to refine into heavenly essence. After using the primordial energy, Zen's physique was dramatically altered, and he was able to take in more dragon scales energy. So to activate more dragon scales, he needed the heavenly essence. 3 more days flew by. Morning came, and the roll of drums echoed throughout Oracle City. Everyone knew the martial arts contest being hosted by the World Commercial Alliance had started. Oracle City was so large that people weren't exaggerating when they called it a small country, and a normal person needed 3 days to cross it. And yet, the drums could be heard clearly throughout the city. It's the drum of vitality between heaven and earth. Finally. It's said that the stick used to beat the drum weighs 50,000 pounds. An ordinary person can't even lift the stick to beat the drum. This drum absorbs vitality between heaven and earth every day, and each time it's beaten, the vitality is released into the air. If we can absorb some, we'll extend our life. Let's breathe deeply. Zen could feel the vitality in the air around him when the drumming began. It was immense, and cultivators absorbed the vitality, which was a bonus from the World Commercial Alliance to Oracle City. Today was the day. Zen left the yard where he had confined himself to refine acupoints and headed to the World Commercial Alliance headquarters. The stage was already set for the contests by the World Commercial Alliance, who had also set up a stand that could hold 100,000 people at 20,000 feet long, divided into 12 rows in anticipation of the spectators. Zen was amazed at how many refiners he saw as he walked to the headquarters. It was still early, but the area was filled quickly with refiners and becoming overcrowded and noisy. Many of them were from the central region. There were numerous sects, powers, and families all hailing from the central region, including the Cloud Hall and the Ethereal Spirit sect. Millions of cultivators came to watch the contest, and this was only a tiny amount. The price of a ticket to the martial arts contest is 1 Supreme Life Vitality Crystal, only. Someone was yelling as he walked through the crowd. A Supreme Life Vitality Crystal for a ticket, thought Zen, speechless at the steep cost. However, even at that price there were tens of thousands of cultivators willing to pay. It seemed that the World Commercial Alliance did know how to run a business. Or were those cultivators just very wealthy? Zen quickened his step as he walked right to the stage. Stop, if you want to watch the contest, go that way, please, said a World Commercial Alliance steward who stopped Zen. He didn't think Zen was there to participate when he noticed Zen was at grade 4 of the Illuminating Soul Realm. Zen smiled and politely stated, "You misunderstand, sir. I'm a contestant." "You are a contestant?" asked the steward, amused at what Zen told him. He sarcastically added, "Do you know where to go? This isn't a place where you can make jokes. Go away." Chapter 467. A bully is always a coward. I'm telling the truth. I am really here to participate in the martial arts contest. If you're still doubtful, I can simply show you my token to prove it, Zen insisted, about to bring out and show him his token. But in spite of that, the steward didn't even bother looking at the token at all. The only thing he did was let out a contemptuous smile. Then he said, "Throughout the years that I've been a steward, I've had plenty of chances to meet jerks just like you, but I have never come upon a person at the Illuminating Soul Realm who had the guts to try and fool me. You're the very first person to ever do so." Zen's eyebrows were deeply knitted from hearing the steward's words. Silently standing still, he had been deep in thought, looking for an effective way to get the steward to believe him. Coming to the realization that Zen was intent on staying there, a devious smile crept onto the steward's face. Turning his back on Zen, he yelled over to someone at the arena, "Monkey! There's a stupid idiot right here looking for some trouble. Would you be so kind as to teach this guy a lesson and shove him away? A towering and seemingly strong man darted out of the arena at breakneck speed. He looked so intimidating, standing 8 feet tall, much like an iron wall. Each time he would stomp on the ground, the earth would shake as a result. Who has the audacity to stir up trouble for the World Commercial Alliance? You're merely bringing forth your own demise, declared the strong man being referred to as Monkey upon dashing out of the arena. On his arrival, he didn't waste any time and instantly glared at Zen. With a jeering laugh, he quickly stretched out his hands, trying to get a hold of Zen. But because Zen had already strengthened his body with primordial energy, he possessed exceptional agility. That being said, without even having to use life vitality, he swiftly moved and dodged the massive fan-like hands of the strong man without breaking a sweat. The strong man exclaimed, with astonishment written all over his face. Zen had been as slippery as an eel. The strong man really thought he had him within his grasp, but in the end he wasn't able to catch him. As a matter of fact, he couldn't even so much as graze his clothes. Meanwhile, as the strong man had been left dumbfounded, Zen had already positioned himself without delay to his side with a knife in his hand, shimmering much like frost and snow. He then pointed it at his ribs. I've told you, I came here for the martial arts contest. If I may say so, the old fellows of the World Commercial Alliance were not bad in worldly wisdom, but ones like you on the lower ranks couldn't hold a candle to them, Zen remarked. The old fellows, the higher-ups of the World Commercial Alliance, were really as sly as foxes, such as Michael Moe. Even those 3 fatties of the World Commercial Alliance whom he got acquainted with upon his return from the Dragon Soar Arena didn't have the nerve to force him to spill the beans regarding the secret of the Dragon Soar Arena. As they were dealing with Zen, they were still holding back a little, leaving some room for possible future negotiations. In contrast, these understrappers appeared to be quite the degenerates by virtue of the World Commercial Alliance itself. The World Commercial Alliance was a grand alliance that could be on equal footing with the ethereal spirit sect, boasting with a greater number of understrappers. Although those of the top brass of the alliance had a tendency to lay low, there was just no way for them to train every single one of their men to act the same way. It wasn't until the minute the steward witnessed everything firsthand that he finally realized he might have underestimated the capabilities of Zen. Considering the tone of his voice, he suddenly thought that what Zen was telling them could possibly be the truth all along. He really didn't come here to stir up trouble, and this guy who was merely at the Illuminating Soul Realm might actually be qualified for the main draw match. Could you please bring out and show me your token, sir? The steward stuttered, forcing out a disgusting smile. Hearing his request, Zen shot the steward a dull glare. But afterwards, he pulled out the token from his pocket, swinging it in front of the steward's very eyes and then quickly taking it back and leaving. The dangling token was gleaming into his eyes, so much so that he couldn't take a good hard look at the inscription on it. In spite of that, he didn't bother prying any further about it and ultimately decided to just leave him be. The martial arts contest took quite a significant amount of time, even months long, to be carefully organized, that even the tiniest details of the contest had been truly well planned. For that reason, as soon as Zen had entered the lobby, an elder noticed him in an instant, walking over to him and asking, "Have you passed the pre-qualifying match for the contest? Put out your token and show it to me." Right away, Zen handed the token over to the aforementioned elder. The elder grabbed the token, meticulously inspecting Zen's identification, which was also specified in a register he was holding. After a few moments, he bobbed his head as if to confirm the description, and motioned over to Zen, "Follow me." Zen walked closely behind the elder and headed toward the arena, the gathering place for a crowd of fighters who had successfully made it through the pre-qualifying match. The pre-qualifying match took place in a span of about a dozen days, with only 3 people on each day who would get an opportunity to participate in the main draw match. That being the case, the martial artists who could proudly stand there could be considered some of the most remarkable martial artists among the hundreds of people who originally took part in the pre-qualifying match, and the strength of every single one of them, in no way, should ever be underestimated. As Zen moved closer over to the group, the martial artists who had gotten there before him shifted their gaze at him, appearing to be quite astounded. The majority of the martial artists who were entitled to participate in the main draw match were at the internal elixir realm. And among those warriors, only 2 were currently at the ultimate level of the Illuminating Soul Realm. One of them was Owen, the man who took part in the pre-qualifying match along with Zen on the very same day, and then the other was someone unfamiliar to him. So far, it was already quite an unusual occurrence for a martial artist at the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm to have the chance to enter the main draw match. All things considered, a substantial difference existed between warriors in the internal elixir realm and the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm in terms of their strength. That being said, it would be a gargantuan task for them to even make it through the pre-qualifying match. Prior to then, they had already been amazed that two such disciples appeared up there, thinking that the fact they got qualified was so incredible. And now, who would have ever thought that a guy merely at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm would also arrive at the waiting area alongside them? They thought their eyes had been playing tricks on them, causing gossip to spread amongst the other competitors. How on earth could a guy who was merely at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm have been admitted to the main draw match? The second he steps foot onto the arena, I'm afraid he'll be turned to mincemeat in the blink of an eye. I wonder how he even managed to get qualified at all. At his level of strength, there's no doubt that he wouldn't be able to pass the pre-qualifying match, but in actuality, he has gotten himself into the main draw match. That's kind of weird. So what if he somehow managed to receive the qualification? With the amount of strength he has, entering the arena would be virtually the same as diving at the jaws of death. In the midst of the uproar, a wave of laughter made its way through the martial artists. The audible laugh was originating from the disciple of the Platonist sect. He stated in a roaring voice, "I know just how this man was able to get his qualification." Those words were more than enough to draw everyone's attention. "How did he pull it off?" asked one of the warriors. "I was there when he had his pre-qualifying match. We actually took it on the same day. During the second stage of magic array examination, would you believe me when I say, he had a 12-level pagoda to his name?" Exclamation mark. A 12-level tower could be comparable to 12 strong men at the virtual tribulation realm. Having such an impressive pagoda, without a doubt, he could pass the pre-qualifying match with such ease even if he simply slept throughout the pre-qualifying match, exclaimed the disciple. The truth was that he had actually coughed up more than 100 Supreme Life Vitality crystals just to acquire a spot in the main draw match, causing him to bear ill will against Zen. Would you be able to stand against something like that? Could that possibly mean the World Commercial Alliance has been giving him some kind of a special treatment? That's just so unfair. I'm having a hard time believing the World Commercial Alliance would be capable of pulling a stunt like that. Seeing that a handful of the warriors were hesitant to trust the validity of his statement, that disciple went ahead and remarked, "So, you don't believe the words I say? Then go ahead, come to that man and ask him about it." With that utterance, he motioned over to Owen, who looked quite standoffish and quiet, with his machete handy. With their eyes deeply fixated on him beaming with curiosity, Owen had no choice but to nod along and say, indeed, he owned a 12-grade pagoda, but whether the World Commercial Alliance has been giving him some kind of special treatment is something I'm not really sure about. If I may say so, I honestly think he possesses a great amount of strength. Hearing those words loud and clear, Zen held genuine admiration for him deep inside and regarded him as an opponent of great importance. It should be in his best interest to keep an eye on him when the time came. Despite the fact that Owen was just at the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm and looked as though he could possibly be the weakest one amongst the independent martial artists, Zen could tell at a glance that Owen had actually been blessed with quite a powerful mind which was far more superior to simply having strength. He held no resentment against him for his conduct, however, he seemed to have such a cool-headed disposition at all times. And it was clear as day that only those who believed and had faith in themselves could always stay composed and possess a strong mind. And that was the main reason why he thought that he should keep an eye on him. But as for that martial artist from the Platonist sect, Zen simply paid him no heed, much like an insect that merited no respect. It was just as the saying went, a bully is always a coward. He might have acted as though he were a triumphant hero, but that was far from the truth, for he was but a vulnerable weakling. This guy seems to be dim-witted and can easily burn with intense hostility. I guess it's safe to say that he's probably raring to beat me to a pulp now. Just as Zen was deep in thought about this, the said disciple walked over to him, threatening him with a cold-blooded grin. "Boy, I hope you haven't forgotten how you've messed with me in that magic array. I'm gonna get you for that. Make dang sure. For now, I would suggest you enjoy the last few moments of your pitiful life. Make no mistake about it. I'm gonna beat the garbage out of you on the arena." Zen showed him a lack of concern and didn't bother humoring the martial artist's scornful remarks with a response, but a glint of a cunning smile popped up in his eyes. Despite all of his taunting, Zen still did not trouble himself into responding at all. "You sanctimonious jerk, The martial artist resorted to using profanities, looking at Zen's contemptuous eyes. This infuriated him so much that he clenched his fists, producing a grating sound. He was so fuming with anger that he was already willing to tear Zen to pieces for 2 pins. Setting aside Zen's tricks in the magic array a couple of days ago, up until now, he couldn't fathom how a meager junior at the illuminating soul realm would have the guts to look down upon a man of his stature, who was at the middle level of internal elixir realm, and also the most prodigious disciple of the Platonist sect for the past hundreds of years. Sad to say, it was truly a shame that Zen had utterly disregarded his burning rage. Witnessing everything that had transpired with his own eyes, Owen smiled softly. This martial arts contest could end up being quite interesting. At the end of the intermezzo, an elder of World Commercial Alliance suddenly yelled out, "The mysterious Luna Hall is about to arrive." Upon hearing those words, people saw a huge coffin come within sight up in the sky, making its way, much like a cannonball dashing toward the arena. Zen's eyes widened just a little bit, with a smile creeping onto his face. The major players of the martial arts contest were coming. Chapter 468, Making the Entry. In the martial arts contest held by World Commercial Alliance, only sects on and above the 4th tier were eligible to enter the main draw match directly. The disciples didn't even need to appear for the pre-qualifying test to participate. The mysterious Luna Hall was one of the oldest sects in the central region. Its cultivation methods were sinister and ruthless. It simply didn't adhere to the principles of the righteous or those of devilry. It could conform to any as and when needed. This was why they weren't particularly respected in the region. Even so, nobody was careless enough to slight such a mysterious 4th-tier sect as that. Elderly Luna, who was more than 900 years old, had become a legend in the central region. A lot of high platforms had already been erected on another side of the field. After a while, the gigantic-looking coffin slowly landed on one of the platforms. Bam! The top uncovered on its own as soon as it landed. An old man wearing a black cloak crawled out of it. The deep wrinkles on his face made him look ancient. It almost felt like he was so perishable that he could fall asleep any time now, never to wake up. Despite the creases and folds on his face, his hair was pitch black, giving him a rather spooky appearance. This was whom the legends were about. Elderly Luna, the head of mysterious Luna Hall. All the martial arts practitioners who owned a Supreme Life Vitality Crystal were very influential in the martial arts community. As a result, they knew all the other powerful practitioners in the central region. The crowd recognized the old man at a single glance. Exclamations and heated discussions started to fly among hundreds of thousands of martial arts practitioners. That's elderly Luna. He is around 1,000 years old. And he's still alive. He's not 1,000 years old yet. According to the records, he's 976 years old. He still has more than 20 years to go before he turns 1,000. Do you think he can survive all these years? Shish, keep your voices down. If these words reach any of mysterious Luna Hall's people, you'd be dead in no time. Along with elderly Luna, tens of elders and disciples of mysterious Luna Hall also appeared for the contest. There had to be only 4 spots for the mysterious Luna Hall. No one knew who out of all of them would be selected to participate in the contest. Bloodwood Cliff, the elder of World Commercial Alliance, heralded again. A carriage flew over and stopped on another platform. A milky fair foot stretched out of the carriage first. Then, a woman wearing a satin red gown emerged from it. This was Lady Poison Blood. Her skin struck out of the red fabric, almost glowing, giving her a rather bewitching presence. It took just one look for all the men around to get excited at her arrival. It's Lady Poison Blood. Isn't she completely gorgeous? Yes, but so what? She's too old. Who knows how many men she has slept with? Hey, martial arts practitioners are not supposed to judge people by their ages. Even if she's 200, she looks like she's only 20. Moreover, she appears as delicate as a 16-year-old. Lady Poison Blood's arrival filled the practitioners with lust. The fact that there were so many of them made them unafraid of offending her. In half a heartbeat, all kinds of obscene words started to circulate in the air. But Lady Poison Blood herself was known to have slutty tendencies and didn't take offense at their words. A few disciples of Bloodwood Cliff walked out of the carriage too and stood beside her. Cloud Hall, the elder announced the next name. A flood dragon soared roaring in the sky, tumbled above the clouds and then descended from the sky. Flood dragon, run! Someone screamed in panic. Don't panic. What of a flood dragon? Don't forget where we are. This is the martial arts contest. Tons of accomplished practitioners of virtual tribulation realm are here. If anything happens, these people would be held directly accountable for it. Surely, they might have calculated all the risks. But why is this flood dragon even here? It could easily die here. Most practitioners didn't know Cloud Hall had simply gotten a puppet flood dragon to threaten everyone and establish their power. As soon as the dragon coiled on the designated platform, Letitia was seen walking from behind it. She wore a sparkling white dress, with 2 long decorative phoenix feathers swinging about her as she walked with confidence. She looked like a fairy, aloof and elegant. Apart from being beautiful, she was also the head of Cloud Hall, which was why she was the dream girl of many practitioners. She was so graceful even the most boorish practitioners didn't have the heart to talk about her vulgarly, exactly in contradiction to how they treated Lady Poison Blood. Even those who had the lowest ranks changed their tones according to who they were talking about. People say the head of Cloud Hall is stunning as a fairy. Boy, they are right. She's breathtaking. She's not like a fairy. She is a fairy. If I could talk to such a beauty just once, I wouldn't have anything else to wish for. Letitia looked at the arena indifferently. Her eyes swept across the crowd of practitioners who had passed the pre-qualifying test. Finally, her eyes found Zen, only to discover he was looking at her too. Swiftly, she looked elsewhere, pretending she hadn't noticed him at all. But the pretense was too obvious. It wasn't very hard for Zen to detect it. He shook his head with a faint smile, wondering why Letitia was putting up such an act. Following Letitia, several elders walked out of the coiled flood dragon, then 5 disciples as well. 2 of them were early-stage internal elixir realm practitioners and the other 3 were middle-stage practitioners. They were the strongest among all the disciples of Cloud Hall. As they took ground next to their elders, another announcement occurred. Black Mountain Sect. A big flock of crows came flying towards the arena. As soon as they alighted on the platform, they flew back to where they'd come from. Raven wearing a mask was seen on the platform, along with all the elders and disciples of the Black Mountain Sect. Ethereal Spirit Sect. Another announcement. This time a ship descended on one of the platforms. Septuplets of ethereal spirit flew off the ship. Among them was also a Taoist priest in a cyan gown, with a flying sword strapped across his back. This elegant and handsome Taoist priest was none other than Xander, the leader of Ethereal Spirit Sect. Ethereal Spirit Sect was the only 5th-tier sect in Central Region, which accounted for its sensational arrival. Each and every eye was drawn toward the spectacle. Joining this sect was the ultimate goal of every single martial arts practitioner in Central Region. Xander didn't used to attend the martial arts contest in the past years. Only the septuplets of ethereal spirit would attend the event on his behalf every time. How surprising that he showed up this year. This year's martial arts contest is like no other. So many sects are interested in the Dragon Soar Arena. It's only normal for Xander to come here in such circumstances. One can imagine how fierce this year's martial arts contest is going to be. I'm afraid too many contestants might die. While the mob discussed the seriousness of the contest, the elder of World Commercial Alliance announced again, the Venerable Starry. The Venerable Starry was an independent warrior, with absolutely excellent disciples. The Star Clan in Central Region. Besides some 4th-tier sects in Central Region, there were also some 4th-tier clans. The Star Clan was one of them. Actually, it was a union of 6 3rd-tier clans. They had decided to unite in order to become stronger, more famous and important in the region. This assorted clan had many times proved to be as powerful as a 4th-tier sect. Confucianism Sage Winston, Evil East Lord Eddie. Zen's eyebrows rose at the name that the elder had just announced. He looked toward the sky, his eyes glistening with excitement. Eddie, he thought, I've been waiting for you for so long. Finally, you've arrived. Zen's goal wasn't only to win the martial arts contest and get Dragon Soar Arena, but also to kill Marilyn. She was someone who was very close to Eddie. She also had the purple power body. At the moment, it wasn't practical for Zen to believe he could defeat Eddie and save Yan by competing against him one-on-one. However, if he killed Marilyn, Eddie would have to find another woman who had the purple power body, which would be very difficult for him. Zen could use that time to get stronger. All of a sudden, Zen saw a robust figure flying toward him, with a few others in its tow. At one glance, he recognized the person. He was middle-aged and had a gigantic face. This was the same face he had seen at Cloud Sect. That was Eddie, the strongest practitioner in Central Region. He was Zen's archenemy. For a moment, Zen stared at him intently, as if trying to imprint the image of his face on his mind. When his eyes shifted from him and he saw who was flying right behind Eddie, he was utterly surprised. Is that Marilyn? He wondered. This woman was fat as butter. Fat hung under her chin, hiding her neck. The weirdest thing was, Zen couldn't tell her cultivation base. What's going on? Isn't she supposed to be at the middle stage of internal elixir realm? Why can't I tell her cultivation base? Zen possessed outstanding abilities of perceiving, which usually told him how strong a person was within seconds upon meeting him briefly. Only those who were much stronger than him could make his perception fail. But Marilyn wasn't that stronger. While he wondered about her cultivation base, he noticed another woman behind her, who seemed more like Marilyn. This woman was young and beautiful and wore a small black outfit. She too was a middle-stage practitioner of internal elixir realm. She ought to be Marilyn. He was just trying to guess. He wasn't sure, but he thought there was a high chance he was right. There were 3 other people in the group. One of them was a smartly dressed young boy. His handsome face had a touch of tenderness. By the looks of him, it seemed like he was Eddie's son. Only, Zen wasn't sure if he was a participant in the martial arts contest. If he was, he'd be Zen's rival. Behind this boy were 2 teenage girls. Zen's pupils dilated the moment his eyes landed on one of them. He blinked in disbelief. One of those girls was Yan. She looked very different than before. Her eyes were closed as she followed them, seeming to float in space like a piece of wood. Yan, what happened to you? Detecting how she had changed angered Zen. Chapter 469, The Gift. The woman next to Yan also looked like a puppet, her eyes were closed, and her face was expressionless. What on earth did Eddie do to Yan? How did she become like this? Zen tried to check his emotions. At the end of the day, Eddie was the strongest warrior in the central region. Zen wasn't his match as yet. If Zen let his impulses take hold of him, even Letitia wouldn't be able to protect him. Six senses blocking method, the Cyan dragon said. Although he was the weakest among the 9 genuine dragons in terms of strength, the Cyan dragon was the most knowledgeable. What is that? Zen asked, gritting his teeth. The Cyan dragon explained as he watched Yan and the woman beside her. It's a cultivation method, by which, the cultivators' 6 senses are blocked, so that they can't see, hear, smell, feel, or taste. The cultivators also lose their sense of space. Thus, they're unable to communicate with the outside world. The 6 senses blocking method is supposed to be used by the cultivators when they cultivate. It's a pity that someone like Eddie has mastered it. Obviously, the Cyan dragon knew the history of the 6 senses blocking method. There were some secrets Zen didn't know. But he was too worried about Yan to care about anything else. Is it harmful to the cultivator? Not really. It can improve the cultivator's cultivation base significantly in a short time. Hasn't Eddie been trying to arrange the lustful demon array? The Cyan dragon reminded Zen. I know what he did. He improved Yan's cultivation base using the 6 senses blocking method so that she could enter the internal elixir realm. But wait, Zen seemed to have remembered something. With raised eyebrows, he said, both Marilyn and Yan have a purple power body, so that means. He shifted his eyes to the woman next to Yan. Apparently, her senses had also been blocked. You're right, she also has a purple power body. Eddie has already found the 3 people he needs. Once your sister and that woman enter the internal elixir realm, the lustful demon array will be realized, the Cyan dragon said calmly. It's strange, though, the central region is a small place. Isn't it a coincidence that such a small place has 3 people with a purple power body? You know, purple power bodies are very adaptable. These people are excellent body refiners, the red dragon cut in, giggling. Zen was too anxious to pay any attention to him. Kenneth had said that purple power bodies were rare. There might be 1 in a trillion. Therefore, it should have been extremely difficult to gather 3 people with a purple power body. Zen had thought that Eddie had only found Marilyn and Yan and that it would take him a while to locate the 3rd person he needed. Unexpectedly, he had found all 3. Now, to realize his lustful demon array, all Eddie needed to do was make Yan, and the woman he had recently found enter the internal elixir realm. Zen was running out of time. Marilyn, Zen muttered as he glared at the woman behind Eddie. His fists were clenched so tight that the veins within his fists throbbed. Although Zen was determined to kill Marilyn, he knew that it would be hard to accomplish his mission in the arena. The attendees of the martial arts contest were the best cultivators of the central region. In time, they would enter the virtual tribulation realm and become the most influential people in the central region. They were no ordinary cultivators. Rocher and Patrick, for example, were both strong. Given time, they would become even more competent. Likewise, major sects like Ethereal Spirit Sect and Bloodwood Cliff had disciples as brilliant as Roche and Patrick, and all of them were in the internal elixir realm. Knowing how important this martial arts contest was to him, Zen had come prepared. But, even so, the gravity of the situation was still beyond his expectation. The tiniest slip could mean failure. The cultivators were still enthusiastically talking to each other. Only, now they were focusing on Eddie. As the strongest cultivator in the central region, he had drawn even more attention than Lady Poisonblood and Letitia. Zen was in no mood to listen to what they were saying. Just then, 3 rays of light appeared, soared into the sky, and cracked the clouds. All eyes were drawn to them. In the 3 rays of light, 3 chairs were lifted and finally stopped. In the blink of an eye, the 3 leaders of the World Commercial Alliance were seen in the chairs. The expressions on the 3 men's plump faces varied. They were different from the day Zen had returned from the Dragon Soar Arena. As the backbones of the World Commercial Alliance, the 3 leaders' cultivation bases were unfathomable. Strong as Eddie was, he would be no match for them if they united. Besides these 3, at the World Commercial Alliance, there was also an old man who was over 700 years old. Since people hadn't seen him for a long time, he was a mystery. Till now, all sects, big and small, only knew of his existence, but none knew who he was. Humans who had lived for 1,000 years or more were monsters. They were often referred to as ancient tycoons. Even the elderly Luna wouldn't be able to get that title until 20-odd years later. But the man who was over 700 years old at the World Commercial Alliance was absolutely an ancient tycoon. This was how strong the World Commercial Alliance was. Even the 5th-tier sect Ethereal Spirit Sect couldn't compare. It's such an honor to have so many sects and cultivators present today for the martial arts contest in the Oracle City. The World Commercial Alliance appreciates it. So, a gift has been prepared for every cultivator present, Dylan said slowly. As soon as he finished, hundreds of cultivators were chased onto a platform on one side of the arena by a group of cultivators from the World Commercial Alliance. They were either at the nature level or the illuminating soul realm. However, they all wore handcuffs and shackles. Despair was written all over their faces. These cultivators are our prisoners. They are guilty of all kinds of evil and are on death row. They're supposed to be executed by dismemberment. But today, the World Commercial Alliance will give their human life years to the cultivators present as a gift. With that, Dylan leapt up, and a huge drum appeared above those cuffed cultivators' heads. It's the World Commercial Alliance's drum of vitality between heaven and earth, someone exclaimed. I live in Oracle City and hear the sound of the drum occasionally, but this is the first time that I have seen it, a second person announced. Their human life years. What does that mean? Someone else in the crowd muttered. While people were discussing, Dylan stood on the drum and lifted the 20-foot-long drumstick. The stick weighed 50,000 pounds, but he raised it as easily as if he were holding a thin twig, leaving a trail of an arc. Bang! The stick struck the drum hard and made a dull sound. As soon as the stick hit the surface of the drum, an invisible wave emerged and encircled the cultivators under the drum, creating a vortex. Quickly, the cultivators' bodies shrank. The drum was sucking their blood and energy. After that, above the drum, a ray of golden light started spreading in all directions. Closest to the drum were people from Cloud Hall, Ethereal Spirit Sect, and other major sects. They sucked most of the golden light before it reached the other cultivators. Next, it was the cultivators who had passed the pre-qualifying test, including Zen and Owen. The golden light can increase our human life years? Someone asked. When the light reached Zen, he absorbed a lot and felt immediately refreshed and vigorous. Since there were too many cultivators, the light was thin when it reached the spectators' stand. However, no one was willing to miss this valuable opportunity. The hundreds of thousands of spectators all sniffed greedily. The light was soon exhausted. The amount every spectator got was merely 100 millionth of what Zen had absorbed. When the golden light ran out, everyone turned their attention back to the drum. The prisoners on death row still stood as they had been a moment ago. The only difference was that their bodies had shriveled and their skins were ghostly white. They were no more than zombies. Chapter 470, The Unveiling Competition. The world of cultivators was cruel. The cultivators at the nature level were respected throughout the eastern region, while the ones in the illuminating soul realm were even more influential. Sadly for the hundreds of prisoners, however, they were one-time strong cultivators, but ended up being a means of increasing human life years for the other cultivators at the contest held in Oracle City, no matter how respected they used to be. After beating the drum, Dylan threw the drumstick aside and sat back in his chair, cramming his obese body in. Silence reigned in the arena. Most of the cultivators were still immersed in the transcendent experience the golden light had brought them. After a moment, Dylan summoned his life vitality to his voice and said to everyone present, "Before the opening of the martial arts contest, I'd like to make an announcement which I hope will spread around." His listeners were bewildered by his sudden, confusing words. Dylan continued, "Someone in our World Commercial Alliance concluded that the 9th enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb had turned up." As if a stone had been thrown into a serene lake, heated discussions ensued after a moment's silence. Enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb. The enchanted lamps from the celestial tomb lit on the lantern lighting festival. The last one has turned up too. My goodness, this last enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb hasn't been lit in 1,000 years. What a surprise it is that it has turned up now. How do they know? Haven't you heard that humans who have lived for over 1,000 years are monsters? There's an ancient tycoon in the World Commercial Alliance. I bet it was him who drew the conclusion. The lantern lighting festival was held every year in the central region. During this time, commoners lit lanterns and put up festoons. The praying lanterns were then set into the night sky. Since parents bought smaller lanterns for their children, every boy and girl carried their lamps along the streets and had fun. For ordinary folks, it was just a festival. Yet, for cultivators, the lantern lighting festival meant more than that. On this day, they didn't look forward to lighting ordinary lanterns. Instead, they wanted to light the enchanted lamps from the celestial tomb. They had celebrated numerous lantern lighting festivals. Finally, this year, the last enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb had turned up. If the person who has gotten the last lamp is ready, he can light it at this year's lantern lighting festival so that we can get into the celestial tomb and get what we want, said Dylan. Obviously, his statement was addressed to the person who had gotten the last enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb. Since he didn't know who this person was, he hoped the cultivators would spread his message. He believed that sooner or later, his instructions would reach the right person's ears. Nonetheless, no one knew whether this person would light the lamp or not. After all, he or she might be too weak to enter Mist's celestial tomb. At this moment, Letitia's and Zen's eyes met. The enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb had been retrieved from the Blood Fiend Emperor's last black chest. Although Letitia had brought the Blood Fiend Emperor's treasures to Cloud Hall, only she and Zen knew about the last enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb. Confusion shone in Zen's eyes as he looked at Letitia. Since the celestial tomb was an immortal's tomb, its contents had to be significant. Moreover, the tomb was probably related to the mysterious fairy palace in the eastern region. Zen was resolved to enter the tomb and explore it. However, right now, he had to deal with the martial arts contest first. Letitia blinked and looked away awkwardly. Somehow, she felt guilty and found it hard to face Zen. Well said. I have an enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb too. I'm looking forward to seeing all the lamps be lit at this year's lantern lighting festival. If we can have Mist, the Immortal's inheritances, our cultivation base will definitely increase. Haha, Eddie laughed loudly. So far, the whereabouts of the 9 enchanted lamps were still unknown. No one knew who had which one. Normally, the cultivators who had them would do everything to keep this knowledge a secret. However, Eddie had just revealed his secret openly. By telling everyone that he had an enchanted lamp from the celestial tomb, he was declaring that he had to be one of those who would enter Mist's celestial tomb in the future. This was a voice of confidence and strength. He believed that no one would dare try anything risky on him as he was the strongest cultivator of the central region. After Dylan had made his announcement, the 3 chairs began descending from the sky. Soon they landed on one of the platforms. It was not until then that Xiao, who grew a handlebar mustache and was the referee of the martial arts contest, slowly stepped onto the field. The martial arts contest of Oracle City begins, he declared. Then 4 men flew toward the platforms, carrying an exquisite green jade case with dragon designs and phoenix designs carved into it. This case was used to draw lots. Disciples of 4th-tier sects such as Ethereal Spirit Sect, Bloodwood Cliff, Cloud Hall, and Mysterious Luna Hall all threw their name tags into the jade case as the 4 men passed them. When the jade case came to Eddie, Zen became very tense, watching him closely. He wasn't relieved until the woman at the middle stage of the internal elixir realm who had accompanied Eddie tossed her name tag into the jade case. Now, he was sure that she was Marilyn. He had been worried that she wouldn't take part in the martial arts contest. In that case, he wouldn't have a chance to kill her. The youth who resembled Eddie also added his name tag to the growing pile. When the disciples of the fourth-tier sects had put their name tags in the jade case, it was time to collect the name tags of the cultivators who had passed the pre-qualifying test. Since they had been handed to an elder of the World Commercial Alliance, the elder put them in the case all at once. There were more than 30 cultivators, among whom Zen was the most special, because he had participated in this contest as an independent cultivator, and at the same time, he was also a disciple of the elite house of Cloud Hall. When all the name tags had been collected, the jade case stopped in midair above the field. The first match, the unveiling competition of the event, would undoubtedly draw the most attention. As they were all dying to know who the first two competitors would be, everyone craned their necks and fixed their eyes on the jade case. Xiao flew to the jade case and patted it lightly. Clickety-clack, the jade case started shaking. Soon, 2 name tags were spat out of it. Xiao picked them up and glanced at them. Then he announced, for the unveiling competition, Dawson Zhao, an independent cultivator versus Seeger Yu, a disciple of the mysterious Luna Hall. Dawson Zhao, the divine traveler, the one who got through chaotic ocean of stars alone. Yes, it's him. Even cultivators at the virtual tribulation realm have scruples about challenging the chaotic ocean of stars. Yet, not only did Dawson Zhao get through it safely, but it is also said that he gained a lot from that experience. His life has changed since then. Who is this Seeger Yu of mysterious Luna Hall? I've never heard of him. I guess Dawson Zhao will beat him to a pulp. Mysterious Luna Hall was very secretive. It belonged to neither the righteous faction nor the evil faction of the martial sects. As a sect, it was well known, yet most of its disciples were obscure. Among the hundreds of thousands of practitioners in the spectators' stand, no one had heard of Seeger Yu. The elderly Luna heard the conversation but remained silent. He was sitting in an old-fashioned wooden armchair. His eyes glistened. Seeger, go. Since you're lucky enough to fight in the unveiling competition, it will be a shame to leave the field without seeing blood. Go kill him, he said. Not far from him, an ordinary-looking youth nodded at his words. He jumped off one of the platforms and walked onto the field. Unlike the competitions between sects, the martial arts contests meant life or death. There were no rules about methods. No one cared who the challengers were. There was no pity or mercy, as mercy for a foe would mean death to themselves. A green light curtain rose slowly and covered the entire field. Before the competition started, the 2 contestants would be separated by the light curtain. Not long after Seeger Yu had walked onto the field, Dawson Zhao entered as well. With no ceremonies and no courtesies, the 2 challengers were like beasts trapped in cages, waiting for the light curtain to be removed. It was a touch-and-go situation. With a mild swish, the light curtain disappeared. Dawson Zhao stomped his feet, and life vitality spread like ripples under his feet. He dashed toward Seeger at lightning speed. Chapter 471, Come on Stage. Independent cultivators practiced a myriad of cultivation methods. Although their rank wasn't high, they often had 100 tricks up their sleeves. For example, Dawson could roam the central region without any sect support, and he had even gone to the chaotic ocean of stars and escaped unscathed. Although he didn't go as far into the chaotic ocean of stars as the experts in the virtual tribulation realm, his progress was rare for a cultivator in the internal elixir realm. In the instant that Dawson dashed forward, a trace of earthy yellow life vitality condensed in front of him and formed a heavy shield that encased him. The reason why Dawson was called the Divine Traveler was that he practiced a unique step called the Traceless Snow Step. This step helped him run fast without leaving any trace. After closing in on his opponent through this step, Dawson would launch a series of attacks. He would then be able to wear out his opponent and win. This was a common tactic used by Dawson. It had given him miraculous results in many battles before. Even though Seeger was not well known, he was still a disciple of the mysterious Luna Hall. Dawson was confident, but he was not the slightest bit careless and used his full strength the moment he attacked. Cultivating to the internal elixir realm as an independent cultivator required not only talent but also a heart that was adept at seeing the truth. With a slightly pale face, Seeger looked indifferently at the rapidly approaching Dawson. My master said that blood is necessary for the first battle. This is the only way to keep the audience enchanted. I'm very sorry, but I can only use your blood. A cruel smile grew on Seeger's ordinary-looking face. A few strands of black silk were created as he crossed his fingers and lightly pulled them. In the next instant, the black silk pounced toward Dawson like little snakes. Dawson mainly practiced the cultivation method of the Earth system, and he excelled in defense. That layer of earth and yellow life vitality shield had an astonishing defensive power. Normal attacks simply weren't able to tear it apart. However, the black silk in Seeger's hands went through the life vitality shield easily and entwined around Dawson's body. His arms, abdomen, head, and legs were all enveloped by the black threads. Seeger's face revealed the brightest smile. At the same time, his voice became louder. Bloom. Seeger crossed his hands and pulled the threads with force. Puff. As the black silk suddenly tightened, scarlet blood spurted out from Dawson's sturdy body. Blood droplets sprinkled from his body, forming a chaotic mess of blood stains on the ground. From afar, it looked like a blossoming, blood-red rose. After the blood had drained out, Dawson's body fell to the ground in pieces. Seeger's attack had killed him. When they saw such a bloody scene, the several 100,000 cultivators present fell silent. All of the cultivators that came to participate in the martial arts contest knew that the contest was dangerous and they could die. No one had thought that it would happen so quickly. The impact was so strong that even the cruelest cultivators felt extremely uncomfortable seeing this scene. Life and death in the arena were determined by fate. The rules of the martial arts contest weren't unfamiliar to the cultivators of the central region. However, generally speaking, the contestants wouldn't torture and kill each other like that, unless they had deep hatred toward their opponent. The crowd of cultivators looked at the ordinary-looking Seeger with caution. This disciple from the mysterious Luna Hall is way too ruthless, they thought. Seeger from mysterious Luna Hall wins. Xiao announced. Then, with a wave of his hand, a member of the World Commercial Alliance came to clear the battle arena. The first match had ended within a minute. What impressed those present was not the powerful cultivation methods, nor the monstrous talent, but the bloody scene. When Seeger returned to the high platform, elderly Luna nodded slightly. Seeger, you did well. I'll give you 10 years of freedom. Hearing that, Seeger's ordinary face revealed a surprised expression. Thank you, sir. The mysterious Luna Hall was a unique sect. Freedom was the most important reward for the disciples of the sect. The mysterious Luna Hall had strict rules for its disciples. From the first day they entered the mysterious Luna Hall, they had been implanted with the Death Corpse spell. This spell was extremely poisonous. A year later, the toxic gas would enter the body of the cultivators, where it would fester. The only result for them was a tragic death. Unless the cultivators could break through to the virtual tribulation realm, there was no other way to get rid of the Death Corpse spell. To prevent the attack of the toxic gas, a fire-flaming pill would be given to the disciples of the mysterious Luna Hall every year. As long as they consumed the fire-flaming pill, they would be safe. For this reason, the disciples of the mysterious Luna Hall seldom left the sect. Even if they had to go out on a mission, they needed to return before the Death Corpse spell was activated. Elderly Luna had awarded Seeger 10 years of freedom. It meant that he planned to give him 10 fire-flaming pills so that Seeger could live carefree for the following 10 years. Zen frowned when he saw the battle. It was just as Letitia had said. Although the rewards for this martial arts contest were great, a cultivator would have to pay with his life if he let down his guard. In comparison, the competition at the sect was gentler as no one would die. Anyway, this is also the only way for me to kill Marilyn C., Zen reassured himself. Not long after, Xiao sent another stream of life vitality toward the jade case. Bam! The jade case spat out 2 name tags. Xiao waved his hand, and the 2 name tags flew toward him. He saw the name on one of the name tags, and then glanced at Zen. Zen's heart skipped a beat. This is the second battle. Is it my turn so soon? Wondered Zen. Xiao had indeed drawn Zen's name tag, but he was a bit hesitant. How should he introduce Zen? Generally, the disciples who took part in the pre-qualifying match were independent cultivators. Even if they joined a certain sect, they were from grade 3 sects, or even grade 2 sects, or came from some small family. According to the World Commercial Alliance, those from the sects below the 4th grade were called independent cultivators. However, Zen was a disciple from Cloud Hall, so Xiao wasn't sure about how to introduce him. In the end, Xiao sent a message to the leader of the alliance, Dylan, through his life vitality, asking for his opinion. Read it. Why don't you read the name? Why the heck are you stalling? Do they still want to fight? I'd like to see rivers of blood. The battle should be as bloody as possible. After receiving Dylan's instruction, Xiao nodded and then loudly announced, Zhen Luo from the Cloud Hall will battle against the independent cultivator, Alex Gongsun. It is my turn. When Xiao had looked at him, Zhen had guessed this possibility. He hadn't expected that it would be his turn so soon. The moment had finally come. Zhen didn't show the slightest hesitance as he strode toward the arena. At the same time, another independent cultivator also followed Zhen. When they heard that the next challenger was from Cloud Hall, the cultivators in the audience turned to look at the members from Cloud Hall who were sitting on the high platform. This time, 5 members from Cloud Hall were participating in the competition. The cultivators were confused as to why those 5 didn't move when Xiao called out one of their names. Instead, 2 participants walked out from the section where the independent cultivators were seated. What's going on? Why did the disciple of the Cloud Hall come out from that side? Wait, are my eyes playing tricks on me? I didn't notice him earlier. Is this brat at the Illuminating Soul Realm? He is indeed at the Illuminating Soul Realm. And what's even more surprising is that he is at the 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm. The 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm. How did he manage to pass the pre-qualifying match? Cultivators who passed the pre-qualifying match were treated like minor celebrities, just like Alex Gongsun, who was the eldest son of a 3rd grade family in Oracle City. The Gongsun family had a close relationship with the World Commercial Alliance. As for Zhen, he had not been in the central region for long. Moreover, he had been cultivating since he entered Cloud Hall. Almost no cultivators had heard of him, except Michael and the other members of the World Commercial Alliance. Zhen had been standing in the middle of the crowd. Everyone's attention had been focused on the large sects, so they hadn't noticed that a cultivator at the Illuminating Soul Realm was among the Internal Elixir Realm cultivators. Now that Zhen had walked out, he naturally received a lot of attention. His cultivation level seemed to be a bit lower than the other cultivators. Chapter 472, with all its strength. Disbelief was written all over the faces of the warriors in the audience and the disciples of the 4th grade sects on the elevated platforms. A disciple of Cloud Hall. He reached the martial arts contest through pre-qualifying match. But he's only at the 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm. What kind of ruckus is this? They thought. He's at the 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm. He will be killed the instant he walks on stage, said one of Bloodwood Cliff's disciples, who was at the Internal Elixir Realm. He stroked his nose and added, it's a pity that I'm not his opponent. Otherwise, I would win this battle effortlessly. Indeed, this guy at the Illuminating Soul Realm probably won't last one round on stage, another Bloodwood Cliff's disciple said with a regretful expression. 6 disciples of Ethereal Spirit Sect, who were at the Internal Elixir Realm, sat cross-legged on the sect's elevated platform. Ethereal Spirit Sect had always been strict about its rules and regulations. Even though they were watching the battle, the disciples sat straight with solemn faces. Among these 6 people, the youngest one was only 15 years old, and there was a trace of a childish look on his face. Among the warriors participating in the martial arts contest, he might not have the lowest cultivation level, but he was undoubtedly the youngest. He blinked and asked one of his companions, Philip, didn't you say that I had the lowest cultivation level among all the participants? That fellow's cultivation level is lower than mine. The man he was talking to was Philip, the eldest disciple of Ethereal Spirit Sect. He stared at Zhen and said, a warrior at the 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm. This is strange, but Brent, you have to remember not to underestimate your opponent just because his cultivation level is lower than yours. Although you are at the ultimate level of the Illuminating Soul Realm, no one would dare to think low of you. I got it, Brent nodded. But I don't think he is as strong as me. He wouldn't be able to defeat me when I was at the 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm 2 months ago. Brent stared at Zhen with a confident expression. If the others were to hear his words, they would be shocked. Brent had progressed from the 4th grade to the ultimate level of the Illuminating Soul Realm in 2 months. His talent was incomparable. Philip smiled and shook his head. He didn't understand why Brent would take Zhen, a nobody, so seriously. In the central region, geniuses were usually divided into 4 ranks: human-level talent, earth-level talent, heaven-level talent, and saint-level talent. The elite disciples of a 4th grade sect were usually human-level talents or earth-level talents. If one was evaluated as a heaven-level talent, then it would be enough for any sect to train him wholeheartedly. This was because a heaven-level talent could very well become the core of the sect in the future. As for a saint-level talent, as long as he didn't die, becoming an elder of a great sect was a sure thing. If he worked even harder, he might also become the head of the sect. But Brent's talent was even greater, as it surpassed the saint level. In the history of the Central Region, there had never been a warrior with such talent. He could be considered a divine-level talent. Even Philip, a saint-level talent, who was at the middle grade of the internal elixir realm, didn't have the confidence to defeat Brent, who was at the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm. Even the head of ethereal spirit sect was certain that as long as Brent didn't die, he would become an emperor in the future. In their realm, an emperor did not refer to the emperor of ordinary people. Instead, it meant that he would have the strength to build a sacred place or a divine kingdom. If you like, you can try battling him after you get a challenge card, Philip said with a smile. Brent sighed, alas, let's see if he survives this round. In the martial arts contest, the winners of every battle were allowed to have a prize draw in which they would receive either an exemption card or a challenge card. If a warrior had an exemption card, he could avoid a battle. If a warrior had a challenge card, he could challenge any opponent. However, by the time Brent's turn arrived, many battles would have already taken place. In Brent's opinion, with Zen's cultivation level, he would probably be dead or seriously injured by then. The 5 disciples of Cloud Hall were even more baffled. This time, the 5 disciples sent by Cloud Hall were naturally the elites of the sect. Blake Zong and Benson Xuanyuan were the strongest among the 5. When they heard Zen being introduced to the audience, they turned to look at Letitia. However, Letitia's face was covered by a layer of iced frog, and no one could tell what was on her mind. Since they didn't get an explanation from Letitia, they could only discuss it among themselves. This is strange. Why would a disciple of Cloud Hall appear among the independent warriors? Who is Zen Luo? Blake said in bewilderment. Sitting on the edge of the elevated platform, Benson smiled and said casually, Blake, you have been out training for the past half year. I guess you have not heard the story of an arrogant disciple from Cloud Hall. When he was still a nature creature, he had challenged all the disciples in the elite house on his own. Oh, could such a thing really have happened? Blake's expression reflected the bewilderment that he felt. Yes, he was only at the nature level when he fought continuously against the disciples of elite house. After half a year, he stepped into the illuminating soul realm. I wonder if his true combat strength has increased along with his cultivation level, Benson said indifferently. Blake studied Zen with a complex expression. I hope so. He's still a disciple of Cloud Hall. If he was to be defeated on stage and even seriously injured, it would bring shame to Cloud Hall. Everyone watched carefully when Zen stepped onto the stage. Compared to the Dragon Soar Arena, killing Marilyn was Zen's first goal. Marilyn was at the middle grade of the internal elixir realm. If Zen wanted to kill her, he would have to catch her off guard. Therefore, he had to conceal his true strength first. When Zen stood on the stage, Alex, an independent warrior, also came onto the stage. A heated discussion was triggered among the warriors when Zen arrived. After all, with his cultivation level, it would have been extremely hard for Zen to qualify for the martial arts contest. However, when Alex walked onto the stage, many warriors in the audience suddenly became excited. The reason was simple. Although all the warriors in the central region wanted to come to Oracle City to watch the martial arts contest, at least half of the warriors in the audience were from Oracle City. And Alex was a member of the Gongsun clan, one of the 3 major clans in Oracle City. He was a local warrior from Oracle City. Thus, the local people would support him. Alex is so lucky to battle with a guy at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm. Alex is a lucky dog. I am confident that he will be able to enter the top 10 of the martial arts contest and receive a great reward from the World Commercial Alliance. The Gongsun clan nurtured Alex with all of their resources. He is a heaven-level talent. If he were a disciple of some 4th grade sect, he would be surely considered a core disciple. He is not inferior to those warriors from the large sects on the elevated platforms. Kill that guy at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm. Don't be afraid of Cloud Hall. I want to see blood. Amid this intense discussion, the corners of Alex's mouth curved up slightly. This was the advantage of being a native warrior. The vast majority of warriors in the audience were on his side. This would put his opponent under a formidable amount of pressure. However, in this battle, Alex did not need to give his opponent this pressure because his opponent was truly too weak. Alex removed 2 swords from his space ring. One was green, and the other was gold. They were both middle-grade fairy weapons. Zen's eyebrows rose slightly when he saw the swords. Twin sword school. Among swordsmen, there were very few who used twin swords. Up until now, Zen had only seen Leonard from Skytop Peak use twin swords. The advantage of using twin swords was undeniable. Each of the warrior's hands would be armed with a sword. When paired with the swordsmanship of twin swords, he would unleash a greater power. After all, the swordsmanship cultivation pursued extreme sword intent. Using twin swords to cultivate one's sword intent would be many times as hard as using a single sword. This was also the reason why most swordsmen would give up on using twin swords. Really, you know about twin sword school? Alex smiled blandly, and swung the twin swords in his hands, releasing a torrent of golden sword radiance. Hearing Alex's words, Zen returned the bland smile. He had never minded others looking down on him because such people would eventually pay with their lives. Even though your cultivation level is very low, don't expect me to show mercy. And don't think that I would underestimate my opponent, Alex said, pointing both swords at Zen. As the saying goes, even when facing a rabbit, a lion will also use all its strength. Since you are on stage, I believe you are mentally prepared to die. Chapter 473, Deathly Fist. Even in a family as small as the Luos, there were lots of disagreements. Furthermore, Alex grew up in a family with third-grade forces. Although Alex was a heaven-level talent, if he didn't work hard for the clan, he would be eliminated. The Gongsun family was a large family, and if someone wanted to stand out, they couldn't rely on talent alone. So, even though Alex thought of Zen as weak, he couldn't let his guard down. Throughout the world, the number of martial artists easily killed by opponents was enough to fill hell. As smart as Alex was, he wouldn't make such an obvious mistake. After listening to Alex, Zen's eyes flashed brightly with an idea. He smiled and said, "Not bad." "What do you mean?" Zen's praise confused Alex and he wasn't sure if he'd heard him right. "You're smarter than those idiots if you can understand the concept of a lion fighting a rabbit, so, you're accomplished enough to be my foe," replied Zen as he chuckled. Alex froze at Zen's response. He'd anticipated Zen to say something weak, or even beg for mercy. If he was in a good mood, he might have even spared Zen's life. He hadn't considered Zen complimenting him. Alex was having a difficult time accepting the huge contrast at the moment. Arrogant people usually had a good reason, but what did this kid have? Zen was only at the 4th level of the illuminating soul realm, making him nothing more than a lamb before slaughter. Alex could accept a stronger opponent looking down on him since in the warrior's world, whoever was strongest had the respect. If he was looked down on because he was weak, then he deserved it. But, to be disdained by someone weaker than him, Alex couldn't take that. "Did you hear that? The brat at the 4th level of the illuminating soul realm actually said Alex was qualified to be his opponent. That's the funniest thing I've heard my whole life. When did the illuminating soul realm juniors start bragging at the martial arts contest?" When they heard Zen, the other local cultivators from Oracle City joined in the clamoring. Alex angrily said, "Very good, with a single sentence you've gotten me angry. Since I am, you must be prepared to accept baptism by my anger." Zing, 2 mid-grade fairy weapons, one green and the other gold, vibrated. Then, the arena's enchanted barrier disappeared. The battle started. "One move and you die. Let me show you the consummate sword intent." Alex waved his swords, causing a purple cyclone of sword intent and a golden one to entwine around each other, and he rushed headlong at Zen. Gongsun dancing sword. There was a Gongsun in the past who did a sword dance, and the story of how he used to stun everyone was passed down from generation to generation. The technique Alex was using was passed down from generation to generation in Gongsun clan. The fact that Alex could cultivate 2 consummate sword intents showed just how talented he was. His steps created a pattern as he elegantly slid towards Zen, swinging the 2 swords. This is a sword dance. It's extremely mysterious, but compared to Lily's sword dance, it's still inferior. How weird to see a man dancing with his swords. Zen's body started to move rhythmically. The moment his body twisted, forceful energy erupted. There were actually many areas where body refining and life vitality refining overlapped. For example, when body refiners reached the later stages, they could shape their forceful energy into something they pictured in their minds. However, that wasn't the advantage of forceful energy. Compared to life vitality, the greatest advantage of forceful energy was explosive speed. Life vitality was gathered in the cinnabar field of the body. When a martial artist needed life vitality, he'd extract it from the cinnabar field. But forceful energy was found throughout the whole body, and erupted much faster than life vitality. At the same time, the eruption of power was much fiercer, but it required a martial artist's body to be very strong to be able to withstand the jolt from forceful energy. Of course, this was no big deal to Zen. As the forceful energy erupted in Zen, a faint golden light enveloped his body. While Alex performed his dance, Zen was as agile as a small weasel, rapidly darting around the would-be dance floor, dodging the swords. Fleeing. The day you escape is the day the sun grows cold, ha ha ha. Alex had already completely entered the state. The characteristic of this set of Gongsun dancing sword was its continuance. One move after another was stronger than the last. Therefore, what Alex feared most was his opponent to fight him head-on, because in that case, the power of his sword dance moves wouldn't be seen. But the deal with Zen, well, his worry seemed unnecessary. When they saw Zen retreating, the martial arts practitioners watching from the stands began to cheer. Force him into a corner. Let's see how he dodges then. Once Alex begins the sword dance, there is no escape. He'll have no choice but to fight directly. But Alex has two consummate sword intents and Zen hasn't even drawn his weapon. How is he planning to fight Alex? Does he think he can use his fists? I'm afraid before he can get close enough to Alex, he'll already be torn to shreds by the sword intent. Alex's dance became more stable, and his moves became more powerful. Pair of beauty shadows. Brilliant anticipation. Bright moon in the sky. The sword move names came from the dance moves, so they were poetic. However, concealed within the layers of poetry was killing intent. You have nowhere to run now. Die, scum. Taking a few more steps, Alex corralled Zen in a dead-end corner. Alex taunted, it's useless, even if you knelt before me and begged me to show mercy. Flowers under bright moon. With that, the two swords simultaneously slashed outward in semicircles, combining to form a perfect full moon. Shing, chong, the light crisp sound of metal rang out as Alex's consummate sword intent reached Zen's body. The sharp consummate sword intent left white marks across Zen's skin. After they struck, Zen grasped at the swords using an extremely precise method. Alex's surprise at Zen's move was evident. Zen stood in front of Alex, as Alex glared at him. The martial artists up in the stands were as dumbfounded as Alex. Did Zen just use his physical body to resist Alex's consummate sword intent and steal his swords? Crack, crack, with the ear-splitting cracking sound, both of Alex's swords were snapped in half at the bare hands of Zen. They were mid-grade fairy weapons, though. After Zen snapped the swords, he punched Alex squarely in the chest. Oof! As Alex went flying, he spat, and a long ribbon of blood extended 100 feet long in the middle of the arena. In the end, he landed on the edge of the battle stage, crashing down with all his might, and he lay, unmoving on the ground. His life was more or less gone. Zen saw no need to kill anyone and opted not to. His goal at the martial arts contest was to kill Marilyn. Before that happened, no matter how much he hid his strength, someone would try to force him to show his ace. If he was too bloodthirsty, it might make Marilyn wary of him. The local warriors up in the stands were deathly silent. The situation had changed so quickly, they couldn't even react. In fact, even Alex himself didn't have time to react. Before he fainted, he still hadn't figured out what he did wrong. What Alex didn't know was there wasn't anything he'd done wrong, it was just that he was too weak compared to Zen. On the high platform, Brent, the ethereal spirit sect disciple, blinked his eyes and said, "Wow, he's really strong. I probably couldn't beat him when I was at the 4th level of the illuminating soul realm." The eldest disciple from the ethereal spirit sect shook his head and said, "Not necessarily. I judged him wrong. Zen used forceful energy, and he's a body refiner. Perhaps he has a secret technique that allowed him to break Alex's sword intent, suddenly. If my memory serves me correctly, you already comprehended half of the space law when you were at the 4th level of the illuminating soul realm, right? He wouldn't have been your equal back then. Being able to comprehend half of the 1st level of the space law when in the illuminating soul realm would have shamed even the old guys such as Morphins of Cloud Hall. That might not be the case." Brent's estimation of his strength was very accurate. The eldest disciple continued, "Brent, you're the most talented warrior in the history of the Central Region, and the only divine-level genius from the ethereal spirit sect. Don't compare yourself to a guy like Zen, or you'll lose your warrior spirit." Brent grinned. "All right, I understand. In any case, as long as this brat perseveres, I'll challenge him sooner or later." Chapter 474, Offensive. Brat. Brent, That's rude. Zen's older than you. Don't be so impudent, Xander said, unable to remain silent any longer. Proper etiquette and manners were important to members in the ethereal spirit sect. Brent's face reddened at Xander's reminder, and he said in a low voice, "You're right. I'm sorry." As a body refiner, Zen can use his body refining techniques to raise his level and withstand the consummate sword intent. "So, we can't underestimate him," commented Xander emotionlessly. One of the ethereal spirit septuplets said, "The martial artists from the central region mainly train their life vitality, so, we've never seen such a strong body refiner. The Cloud Hall doesn't seem to have any powerful body refining techniques either. Accordingly, we don't know that brat's methods." Huh, Xander cocked a brow when he heard the two words, "that brat," and he frowned again. Although the ethereal spirit septuplets were core members of the ethereal spirit sect, they had to abide by the rules laid out by the sect too, and they couldn't say anything rude. "I'm sorry," said the septuplet, when he saw how upset Xander became. It's no wonder he passed the pre-qualifying match despite his low level. It turns out he's a body refiner. I never heard of a body refiner being so strong. I've seen many body refiners, and the strongest of them couldn't even defeat an ordinary warrior who'd reached the illuminating soul realm. Why's this guy so strong? How many acupoints did he refine? Do you think he's refined dozens of his acupoints? In body refining, the most important thing was refining acupoints. Body refining wasn't popular in the central region, so, until now, no one had refined all 108 acupoints. However, Zen had done just that, and he did it in just a few days. He refined his body this much in only a matter of days. Letitia's eyes reflected her shock. When she'd watched Zen secretly a few days ago, she discovered he was refining his body. She didn't expect that in the few short days, he would have refined his body to such an extent that even she had never heard of. Naturally, Letitia didn't know Zen's body was specially refined with the Red Dragon's technique, using primordial energy. Moreover, the purest power of thunder and fire was also used to hone his acupoints. Even the upper world forces couldn't utilize this unique advantage. That was Zen's secret to refine himself so quickly. Zen, of the Cloud Hall, wins. After Xiao made the announcement, the World Commercial Alliance members went to remove the half-dead Alex and clean his blood from the arena. In the stands, Alex's family glared at Zen viciously, as if any one of them planned to personally strangle him. Sensing the intense killing intent directed at him, Zen turned and looked up at them, but didn't care in the slightest. "Zen, according to the rules, you can draw a card." As Xiao finished explaining, someone carrying a box approached and placed it in front of Zen. Zen shoved his hand blindly into the box, and after moving it around, he took a card out. When he opened it, he saw a small wooden plate with the word, "Exemption," written on it. "You've drawn an exemption card, which means if you draw a fight again and you don't want to, then you can use this card," Xiao explained to Zen. Zen nodded in understanding. Surprisingly, he pulled an exemption card the first time. If he had drawn the challenge card, he would have been able to challenge Marilyn. However, when he thought about it, even if he drew the challenge card, he couldn't have challenged Marilyn right away. If his technique was obvious, Eddie would be able to see right through him. After he put the first card down, Zen walked over to the independent warriors. At this moment, Letitia's calm voice drifted over as she said, "Zen, you are a disciple of the Cloud Hall. There is no need to stand over there." The Cloud Hall had a grandstand of their own beside the arena, and everyone knew Zen was a disciple from Cloud Hall. If Zen remained in the area for independent warriors, then it would be embarrassing for the Cloud Hall. It would appear as though there was an issue between Zen and Cloud Hall, which would lead to others ridiculing the hall. Zen didn't have any issue with Cloud Hall, but he was in trouble with Letitia. When he proposed to participate in the martial arts contest, she didn't agree with him. Now, as he heard her, he looked back at her and said, "I entered the main draw match through the pre-qualifying match. I think it's better for me to stay over there." After he spoke his mind, Zen turned and walked over to the side stand where the other independent warriors stood without looking back. Letitia looked slightly embarrassed. Even though she was young, like a little girl in the eyes of the old masters, she was the leader of Cloud Hall, one of the strongest sects in the central region. This was very embarrassing to her. Letitia drew an icy mist over herself, making it difficult for anyone to see her face. However, everyone could see how stiff and unnatural the cold fog made her. "Dick, Blake's face darkened because he'd considered Zen a member of Cloud Hall, and he didn't think Zen would embarrass their leader the way he did. To the disciples of Cloud Hall, along with the rest of the Central Region warriors, Letitia was nothing short of a goddess. Admittedly, they were all crushing on her. However, the most of the disciples hid their feelings deep within their hearts. After all, they believed themselves inferior and unable to match her in terms of either strength or status, so none of them dared to reveal how they felt. They couldn't stand how Zen, a disciple of Cloud Hall, humiliated their goodness, Letitia, in public. "If I fought you in the arena, I wouldn't show you any mercy," said Benson, scowling disgustedly. The jade case lots were drawn randomly. So, even if the name tags of two disciples from the same sect came out from the case, they'd have no choice but to enter the arena and fight each other, unless one of them surrendered immediately and admitted defeat. The candidates from other sects were discussing what happened amongst themselves. They hadn't thought Zen would actually dishonor the Cloud Hall's leader. However, this was an internal matter of the Hall. Apart from cursing Zen, they couldn't say anything. Xiao and the others were becoming increasingly confused. What was the deal between Zen and Letitia? When Zen fought during the pre-qualifying match, Letitia came and watched. After the match, she asked them not to tell Zen that she had been there. From the looks of it, Letitia and Zen were on bad terms. What was this drama about? Xiao couldn't understand and shook his head once again, before shaking the jade case. After two name tags were pulled, he loudly shouted, "Independent Warrior, Pablo Zhao versus Quincy Chow of the Bloodwood Cliff." The martial arts contest was a round-robin tournament, and the tempo of the battle was extremely fast. The first and second rounds were one-horse races, but the third one was a difficult one. Pablo and Quincy were both in the primary level of the internal elixir realm, so their cultivation and strength were similar. The fight continued for 5 minutes before Quincy finally won by a narrow margin. Then came the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth fights. Every winner drew a card afterward. What was strange was that almost all of them had the same one, an exemption card, and none of them had drawn a challenge card. At first, everyone thought that the chances of getting an exemption card and a challenge card were 50-50, but now, it seemed the chances of drawing a challenge card were astonishingly slim. In the end, Xiao came forward to explain that there was only a 1/5 of a chance to get a challenge card. Other than the first fight and the second one between Zen and Alex, which were quite fierce, the rest of the fights were a bit dull. The martial arts contest had no rules. Even if one killed the other, there wouldn't be any consequences. Because of this rule, the martial artists were more cautious. In order to make it to a higher rank, one had to maintain his strength to the very end. If they were to fight hard at the start, life vitality would be greatly depleted and the combatants might even lose an arm or a leg. If that happened, what chance would there be to make it to the top 10? The World Commercial Alliance was rich, so, they prepared a small gift for each martial artist participating in the contest. In fact, the gift wasn't really small at all, but, if it was compared to the top 10 rewards, it was indeed tiny. Many martial artists didn't have high hopes of obtaining the Dragon Soar Arena. Even if the independent warriors were able to obtain it, they wouldn't have any chance to use it, so, their goals were to reach the top 10. When it came to the 7th round, the atmosphere in the arena became chaotic. The arena was in an uproar when the announcement sounded, Blake Zong of Cloud Hall vs Edgar Satu of the Ethereal Spirit Sect. Chapter 475, Thunder Law. It cost each of the warriors in the audience a supreme life vitality crystal to watch the martial arts contest, and they wanted to see strong warriors fighting each other. Each of the earlier matches was between an independent warrior and a disciple from various sects. Most of the independent warriors weren't real independent warriors, but instead, they were disciples from third-grade sects or clans. Comparatively, there was a huge gap between them and disciples from the fourth-grade sects. Therefore, it was easy to predict how the earlier matches would go. The battles were far from what one would consider intense. But now, Blake, one of the leading figures from a fourth-grade sect, Cloud Hall, was stepping into the arena. His opponent was one of the 6 disciples of the Ethereal Spirit Sect. Even before the match started, people knew this would be a terrific match. "Taking all bets, place your bets," shouted warriors in the audience. Whenever there was a competition, there was gambling. The second and third grade sects and other noteworthy powers from the central region would hold competitions and gambles as well. However, there were many pitfalls. Some sects would set up competitions and then cheat to win. The strong warriors who could win competitions easily would lose to their opponents on purpose so that gamblers would lose lots of life vitality crystals. The martial arts contest hosted by the World Commercial Alliance was less likely to have any cheating. The Dragon Soar Arena was something that all the large sects had to obtain, and the World Commercial Alliance wouldn't join forces with other large sects to cheat people just for some life vitality crystals. Therefore, the martial arts contest was a playground for gamblers. A vast majority of the warriors were natural-born gamblers. The several 100,000 warriors watching the martial arts contest had two main purposes. One was to observe the fighting between the geniuses, and the other was to gamble. What are the odds? The odds. The World Commercial Alliance seems to still be favoring Edgar from the Ethereal Spirit sect. Okay, I bet on Edgar. The Ethereal Spirit sect is a 5th grade sect after all, and is a grade stronger than Cloud Hall. Do you think Blake will make an easy target? Although Blake is in the early stage of Internal Elixir realm, he once killed the 3 ghosts of the Yellow Sea on his own. His reputation shook the entire Crane country. Those 3 ghosts were all warriors in the middle stage of the Internal Elixir realm. Many warriors began to analyze Blake and Edgar according to their past performances. After reaching the Internal Elixir realm, elites from large sects would be entrusted with some difficult tasks. Gradually, they would be able to establish a reputation for themselves in the central region. Crane Country, mentioned by the warrior, was a small country in the central region. It was where the Auspice sect was located. Auspice sect was one of the 5 sects under Cloud Hall. Back then, the 3 ghosts of the Yellow Sea escaped to Crane Country. Under the request of the Auspice sect, Cloud Hall issued the mission. The outcome was that Blake single-handedly killed the 3 ghosts of the Yellow Sea and became famous throughout Crane Country. Thus, the Crane Country's ruler had a statue erected in honor of Blake, and Blake was dubbed the God of War. To commoners of Crane Country, Blake's existence was akin to the God of War. In comparison, Edgar of the Ethereal Spirit sect wasn't well known and had next to no reputation. Although the Ethereal Spirit sect was a 5th grade sect and had more disciples than the Cloud Hall, its disciples were not as widespread as the Cloud Halls. After all, 5 2nd grade sects had attached themselves to the Cloud Hall. Besides, each grand sect, whether Ethereal Spirit sect, Cloud Hall, Bloodwood Cliff, or Mysterious Luna Hall, had its unique features. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to grow into famous sects. "Ah, I'm so jealous of you, Edgar," said Brent dejectedly. He took a deep breath and went on, "I wish I were the one fighting Blake." Edgar patted the boy on the shoulder and comforted him by saying, "Don't be disappointed. The strongest will certainly win in the end. But it's so boring, just sitting here. I want to challenge someone," commented Brent as he turned to look at the elevated platform next to his. He shouted, "Hey, challenge me if you get a challenge card, okay?" Up on the elevated platform alongside the Ethereal Spirit sect was Eddie's group. Eddie glanced over and saw that a 15-year-old child was issuing the challenge. He smiled faintly, but didn't say anything. However, the young man beside him gave Brent a look of indifference and said, "You are quite the cocky one, aren't you?" "Ha, the martial arts contest champion will be me. But, all this waiting is getting so boring," boasted Brent, rolling his eyes. "Oh really, I'm feeling pretty bored, myself. Since we can't use the competition field right now, why don't we go out there and battle?" the young man suggested lightly. Brent was overly confident. As the son of the top person in the central region, the young man had the same confidence. "Brent, don't talk such nonsense. You're being extremely rude," chided Xander. Eddie smiled at Xander and said, "Xander, let the children go play with each other. You're still as stubborn as ever. Your Ethereal Spirit sect has found a good disciple though." Eddie had noticed Brent a while ago. Although Brent was only 15 years old, his cultivation level was at the ultimate level of the Illuminating Soul realm. With his cultivation level and bone age, he was shockingly further along than anyone from an average clan. But in Eddie's eyes, that wasn't serious. He did think something was different about Brent. That child seemed to be very special. On the other hand, Xander gave him a careless grin, disagreeing with Eddie. The Ethereal Spirit sect and Eddie were always disagreeing with each other. Great conflicts happened between the two. Once a talented disciple appeared in one sect, the other sects would try their best to destroy the disciple. Eddie was one example. A few decades ago, the Ethereal Spirit sect took to suppressing Eddie. But unfortunately, the Ethereal Spirit sect failed. Instead, Eddie rose to number 1% of the central region. Furthermore, it wouldn't be long until Eddie's lustful demon array would take shape. If Eddie was to make a breakthrough in the lustful demon array, then he wouldn't have to be afraid of anyone in the central region. It was something the members of the Ethereal Spirit Sect, World Commercial Alliance, and even Cloud Hall didn't want to see happen. There were rumors that Eddie wanted to build a divine kingdom in the central region. The divine kingdom was a country of warriors and could be considered a 6th grade sect. That meant Eddie wanted to use his power to unify the central region. The Ethereal Spirit Sect was a famous sect of the central region. How could they be willing to bow down to anyone? Inevitably, it would be a fierce battle that would affect the entire central region. Although the Bloodwood Cliff, Black Mountain Sect, Mysterious Luna Hall and other 4th grade sects seemed to get along well, they might take sides with Eddie. Within the battle arena, Blake stood still, smiling confidently. Standing before him, Edgar raised his hand slightly and said indifferently, "Blake of Cloud Hall, I've actually been waiting a long time for the chance to fight you." "Oh, why's that?" questioned Blake. Crack. A small arch of lightning shot from Edgar's hand and he replied, "I heard you comprehended the Thunder Law. I practice the cultivation methods of Thunder System too. So, I want to know which one of us is stronger." Seeing the bright blue lightning dancing on Edgar's hand, Blake's eyes widened somewhat and he commented, "You seem to have grasped as much as I did. Look everyone, there's lightning on Edgar's hand. He must have understood at least half of the Thunder Law. What a genius. What a monstrous genius. Even a warrior at the virtual tribulation realm would barely be able to understand half of the Thunder Law. I never thought Edgar would be able to do it at the internal elixir realm. The Ethereal Spirit Sect's resources are truly unimaginable. It's truly a sect of talented people." Sitting there meditating, Zen felt forceful energy flowing through his body slowly and filling every cell while the life vitality in his belly churned continuously. The forceful energy and the life vitality were different, like two distinct rivers in Zen's body, and neither of them was in contact with the other. Maintaining the state would allow Zen to practice two forms of cultivation at the same time. Amidst the warriors' heated discussion, Zen cracked his eyes open, and peeked over in time to see two layers of lightning flashing from Blake's and Edgar's bodies. They both have Thunder Law in their lightning. Blake's Thunder Law is slightly more abundant, but Edgar's aura is a bit stronger. Blake's chances of winning will be better than Edgar's, thought Zen as he watched the arena indifferently. However, it didn't matter whether it was Blake or Edgar who won. Their understanding of the Thunder Law couldn't compare to Zen's knowledge of it. Every form of law power was divided in 10 layers. The Thunder Law these two wielded was only about halfway into the first layer, but Zen had already completely mastered the first layer of the Thunder Law. Chapter 476, Transcendent Divine Might. As the curtain of light in the middle of the arena gradually disappeared, the battle between Blake and Edgar started. Many factors affected martial artists combating, such as the mental state, physical condition, cultivation methods and so on. Blake and Edgar had stepped within the internal elixir realm and become top disciples in their respective sects, so obviously they had sharp mental mindsets. The two disciples practiced Tier 4 cultivation methods and were in the primary level of internal elixir realm. Today, they'd face off against one another and employ their knowledge of the Thunder Law. As the match started, Blake was covered in an aura of purple lightning, which made him appear as though he were the Thunder God, incarnate. The purple lightning wove around his body like a slender snake and constantly pulsed across his skin. Standing across from Blake, Edgar looked intimidating with a ball of lightning in each hand. The balls oscillated violently and rhythmically, as if each sphere harbored infinite energy. Crackle, boom. With each foe setting off loud imposing lightning strikes as quick as possible, the field was alive, an electrifying dance of lights flashing through the air. The two clashed continually, and every time they slammed into each other, there were more blinding white flashes, followed by crackling and booming of lightning. Sitting on the edge of their seats, the martial artists watching were riveted by how fast the contenders were. Most of the martial artists were stunned and sat with their eyes glued to the arena, while others cheered, and loudly called the name of whichever fighter they preferred. Especially eager to watch were the martial artists who specialized in refining using the attributes of thunder. Those spectators watched closely, and it was as though they were committing every step and gesture to memory. Cultivating law power was an exacting and challenging path anywhere throughout the universe. The stone tablets that the law power was carved into were only accessible through sects that were at the 4th and 5th grades. It was impossible for warriors to develop the law power if they were one of the independent warriors. Anyone from 2nd or 3rd grade sects who wanted to learn the laws had to be self-taught. However, lacking the comprehension made it impossible for them to gauge how long it should take to understand even a small sliver of law power. However, observing Blake and Edgar's battle meant the would-be students could gain some insight into law power. For that reason, they scrutinized the battle so intently. In the grandstands, seating calmly were disciples from the few great sects. Nothing was revealed through their indifferent eyes, but inside, the disciples assessed the two combatants, and continuously measured the differences in technique and strength and compared the two people's skills to theirs. "Lose," shouted Blake about halfway through the match. Purple lightning that had just been coiled tightly around him resembling a sleek snake suddenly grew more extensive and comprehensive, and resembled a python. Seeing the lightning grow, Edgar scowled grimly, and the lightning balls he held shrank until they were fist-sized. Boom! Crack! As lightning cracked, it created violent, thunderous crashing while lightning enveloped the entire arena in a stark, white light. Most of the audience unconsciously squinted or squeezed their eyes shut against the blinding flash. Zen, however, opened his eyes wider, staring down at the lightning dancing across the arena. He raised his brow slightly, and a trace of confusion clouded his face. Zen noticed that within the movements of the flashes of lightning, some of the thunder law was unfamiliar to him. The sect leaders watching from the grandstands had equally solemn expressions. Xander, however, stared down into the arena, stroking his beard contemplatively. A smile slowly spread across his face. As for the other several 100,000 warriors, most of them were hunched, or cringing in their seats, with their eyes shut. Even with the enchanted barrier blocking the full force, they weren't able to bear the luster of the light. Eyes shut tight was how an outsider watched the battle, while an insider watched everything, and appreciated what they saw. Odd, the lightning light Edgar uses has a trace of law power that I don't understand, reflected Zen curiously. That is Thunder Law's second layer, known as purification, rumbled the Cyan Dragon in response to Zen's wandering thoughts. Purification, and that is the second layer into the Thunder Law. Hidden within the lightning was a small fragment which was barely visible to even Zen's eyes. Yes, the first layer is annihilation, the second layer is known as purification, and the third is heavenly tribulation. When humans attempt to pass into the realm of life and death, the heavenly lightning that drops is termed heavenly tribulation. Revealed the Cyan Dragon, explaining the first three layers of the Thunder Law simply. Annihilation, purification, and heavenly tribulation. The Thunder Law was divided in 10 layers, each corresponding to a subcategory law. Although Zen understood 9 different law powers, he had a lot to learn still. The ethereal spirit sect warrior has comprehended half of the first layer, annihilation. Perhaps it was a coincidence for him to have gotten a few fragments from the second layer of Thunder Law. Maybe, he is able to understand those fragments. While it is just a small amount, it's more than enough to win, explained the Cyan Dragon. Nodding in agreement, Zen watched as the battle ended. In the aftermath, Blake's scorched body was sprawled out on the ground, and the air reeked of his singed flesh. Edgar wobbled slightly but firmly stood on the other side of the arena looking extremely weak, and smiled, happy with his victory. I'm afraid the second layer of law power doesn't exist in the central region. To learn the second layer, I have to go to the upper world, or possibly to the 4 divine kingdoms, muttered Zen. You've already completed the baptism by laws, and there's no need to pursue a higher level in law power for a short time. If you combine 2 or even 3 types of laws, the results will be extreme. Before the Cyan Dragon had time to finish, he was cut off by the Red Dragon, who said, "Ha ha. Boy, don't listen to my brother. He's talking nonsense. The law power is the source of the world, but body refiners work outside the laws of nature. If you push yourself to the limit, you will become stronger. After you go through the 8 path platforms, I will teach you transcendent divine might. No matter what form of law power any rival wields, with transcendent divine might, you will be able to defeat your foes with a single punch." "Brother," said the Cyan Dragon, trying to keep the disdain from his voice. "Transcendent divine might, what's that?" Zen asked eagerly. His heart skipped a beat. "About that." Frustrated about being cut off, the hot-tempered Red Dragon stopped short of explaining and seethed. His personality was the opposite of that of the calm Cyan Dragon, and being interrupted the way he was left the Red Dragon temporarily stumped. Although Zen wasn't sure what transcendent divine might was, he knew it couldn't be an everyday thing. Zen considered the 9 dragons to be authorities of the world. Whether they were telling Zen about something they cared about, or it was something they didn't care about, it was always a pearl in Zen's opinion. While the Red Dragon stewed silently, Zen beamed and said, "Okay. We have a deal. After I go through the 8 path platforms, you will teach me the transcendent divine might. Zen didn't know what transcendent divine might was, but before asking any questions, he agreed to the red dragon's offer. The cyan dragon erupted in a hearty chuckle, and said, "Slick move there, brat. My brother's knowledge of transcendent divine might is fundamental. It isn't that he doesn't want to teach you. However, right now, it isn't the right time. When you attain the 8 path platforms, you will be able to develop that as well." "You haven't explained what transcendent divine might is yet," asked Zen, continuing his internal conversation with the dragons. The cyan dragon's hesitation drove Zen's curiosity. There is no stronger martial arts skill beyond transcendent divine might, just as the name suggests. If a warrior can master it, he will become the master of the world, stated the cyan dragon slowly. What the cyan dragon divulged made Zen gulp hard. To be the master of the world would make someone godlike, and that meant the person was extremely powerful. My acupoints are all refined, so I'll be able to make a breakthrough into the path platforms. I'm resolute about studying transcendent divine might. Zen mused while his eyes lit up elatedly. I gave my word, and I won't back out. However, let me remind you. It's not as easy as you think to reach the path platforms, cautioned the red dragon. He paused before going on. It's especially difficult here in the central region. It is actually easier to attain a breakthrough into the internal elixir realm, or virtual tribulation realm, than the path platforms. I understand, answered Zen eagerly. The happy twinkle in his eyes was slowly replaced with a look of cold, steely resolve. Admittedly, pursuing advanced knowledge and honing oneself was a difficult, time-consuming challenge. But, then again, slow and steady would win the race, which was proven true from the dawn of time. While Zen and the dragons conversed, Blake was carried off the field and back to Cloud Hall. A collective sigh went out from the warriors sitting in the stands. Blake was very strong, and they didn't think Edgar was stronger. Watching the intense fight left many warriors feeling the supreme life vitality crystals they'd spent weren't wasted. The trip here to Oracle City was genuinely worth the cost. Once the arena's battlefield was cleaned, Xiao was up on the platform and reached into the container to draw the nameplates. After he pulled out 2 nameplates, Xiao's voice boomed as he shouted, "Brody Bu of the Bloodwood Cliff versus Zen Luo of Cloud Hall." When Brody heard his name called, he sniffled, wiped at his mouth with the back of his hand, stood, and walked to the grandstand's edge. His scowl changed immediately to a smile, and he stated, "Good, good, I'll finally fight him." Brody had just complained to one of his companions about not having a chance to fight Zen. It didn't occur to him that his nameplate would be drawn so soon. "Luck is on your side, Brody. Really, this means your destiny will be a bright one," commented one of the warriors flatteringly. The warrior was at the internal elixir realm. Chapter 477, The Gap. A loud voice rang throughout the area and drew the attention of the audience. "This is the first battle of our Bloodwood Cliff disciples. Crush him, Brody, show your strength." Cheers and yells erupted from the disciples of Bloodwood Cliff in support. Meanwhile, Lady Poison Blood, who sat at the back of the grandstand, stared coldly at Zen. This young man called Zen Luo had once humiliated her, the leader of Bloodwood Cliff. However, she wouldn't let such a thing spread around. After all, she was a dignified leader of a 4th-grade sect and she didn't want to have her good reputation ruined by this unscrupulous young man. But that didn't mean she would not do anything to revenge herself. "Brody, come over," Lady Poison Blood said in a low voice. "Yes, my lady." Brody Bu heavily walked towards Lady Poison Blood's side. At that moment, Lady Poison Blood put her delicate finger into her mouth and gently bit it. Blood oozed from her soft fingertip. Brody's eyes twitched slightly when he saw what Lady Poison Blood had done in front of him. "My lady," he said in a trembling voice. The Bloodwood Cliff wasn't known for their decency, and they were involved with countless acts of sorcery and crooked means. Brody clearly understood what their leader wanted to do. "Don't worry, this soul-killing poisoned blood can help you to reach full potential in a short period of time and I will help you make up for the lifespan you will lose in the process. However, you have to go down there and kill that brat." Lady Poison Blood laughed viciously. Brody just looked skeptically at her, and tried to deny her plan. "My lady, I don't need that boost to kill that brat," he said and hurriedly shook his head. However, Lady Poison Blood just giggled, and her beautiful face became even more charming and enchanting. "I know, but, just in case that you will need it." With that, She stretched her finger towards Brody's chest and drew a symbol with the blood on her fingertips. The blood symbol flashed and entered Brody's chest. At that moment, it was as if Brody had become a completely different person. His eyes turned red as a sinister laugh came out of his mouth. "I will destroy him, my lady," he said, and then leapt into the arena. At the same time, Zen also walked towards the arena. "It's that brat who's at the 4th level of the Illuminating Soul Realm. It's his turn to fight again. He actually defeated Alex in the last round. It seems that we can't call him as a common Illuminating Soul Realm cultivator. His real strength is far beyond that. He merely defeated Alex because he took his opponent by surprise. In terms of real strength, he can't compare to a warrior at the Internal Elixir Realm." Although Zen was a disciple from a 4th-grade sect, it was still hard for many of the martial arts practitioners to accept that an Illuminating Soul Realm warrior had defeated an Internal Elixir Realm warrior. Not everyone could challenge an opponent who was levels higher than their own. The Central Region had an ironclad rule that one's cultivation level decided his strength. Only a few elite disciples of the 4th-grade sects might easily challenge higher-level disciples. However, this group of talented disciples was extremely rare. Alex, whom Zen had defeated, was a descendant of the 3rd-grade Gongsun clan, and also had the rare heaven-level talent. On the other hand, Zen had overcome the great gap between them, and almost beat Alex dead in one strike. That was not what the spectators had expected to see. They were extremely shocked by the turn of the events and thought that the fight was unfair. From a psychological point of view, they hoped very much that Zen would lose, and lose miserably in this round. This time, Zen faced a disciple from a 4th-grade sect. The spectators all pinned their hopes on Brody. Just then, several disciples from the back of the grandstand walked in. They were dressed in white and had the pattern of clouds on their chests. They were the disciples of Cloud Hall, and the two people at the helm were Patrick and Rocher. "I never thought that the ticket to the martial arts contest would be so expensive. It cost us a Supreme Life Vitality crystal each." Lewis sulked from behind them. "We should feel lucky to be able to get inside. The battle has already begun. I wonder how the Cloud Hall disciples are doing in the battles." Rocher turned around and glared at him. Several months had passed, and Patrick had already entered the 5th level of the Illuminating Soul Realm while Rocher had improved even more. He had already reached the 4th level of the Illuminating Soul Realm, and had almost caught up to Patrick when it came to cultivation. This time, they had carried out a mission that the Cloud Hall had assigned in Black Prosperity Country, which happened to be near the Oracle City. They knew that the martial arts contest was about to kick off, and they certainly would not miss this opportunity. Thus, they went directly to the Oracle City after they completed the mission. "The one on the stage seems to be a disciple from the Bloodwood Cliff. I wonder who his opponent is," Patrick said indifferently as he glanced at the arena. Rocher's sharp eyes swept across the crowd, and one person who slowly walked to the battle stage caught his attention. He felt that this person was a bit familiar. His eyes widened when he realized who he was. "It is Zen," he exclaimed. "What, Zen, is he here to watch the martial arts contest as well?" Lewis asked. Meanwhile, Patrick looked to the direction where Rocher was staring at, and then his face suddenly hardened. "It's really Zen. He's not here to watch the martial arts contest. He's in the battlefield." He smiled wryly. "What?" Lewis was so surprised that he bolted upright. He craned his neck above the crowd to get a better view of the arena, and then his mouth went wide. Lo and behold, it was Zen. "It's really Zen. What is he doing up there? Is he trying to get killed?" Patrick, Rocher, and Lewis were all now disciples in the elite house of the Cloud Hall, and had received the best training from it. They had made incredible progress in the past few months. For instance, Rocher had comprehended 2 laws in the cultivation of Extreme Thunder Sword Intent, namely the Metal Law and the Thunder Law. Although he didn't get much law power, only 1 or 2 among thousands of cultivators were able to comprehend the laws. Moreover, Rocher was only at the Illuminating Soul Realm, so one could imagine just how gifted he was. Patrick also had improved a lot in his strength. He could now summon the Akalanatha continuously without taking a break at the intervals. In addition, the Akalanatha had a second pair of arms. In the Vajrayana, the strongest Akalanatha had 6 arms, which meant that Patrick still had a lot of room for improvement. Lewis, on the other hand, didn't advance as fast as the other 2 did. However, his bodily movement skill was becoming more and more unfathomable. He could almost approach his opponent without casting a shadow and could leave without a trace. Their rapid progress in the cultivation made them very proud in the elite house of the Cloud Hall. They believed that it would not be long before they were able to rank among the top in the elite house. However, when they discovered that Zen was in the arena, they suddenly felt that the achievements they had been so proud of seemed to have become a joke now. Before they arrived in the Oracle City, they previously discussed the martial arts contest along the way. The strongest disciples of each sect gathered to compete in the martial arts contest, and it was a showdown among the internal elixir realm masters. Rocher had complained about how the martial arts contest was held a few years in advance. If the plan hadn't changed, he would have a few more years to practice. Once he reached the internal elixir realm, he would have the opportunity to participate in the contest. Louis had mocked Rocher that even if he was given a few more times, he still might not be qualified to participate in the martial arts contest. In turn, Rocher got so irritated that he even placed his sword on Louis' neck to shut him up. However, Zen had already stood on the arena of the martial arts contest. His cultivation base has improved quite rapidly. In less than half a year, he has reached the 4th level of the illuminating soul realm from the nature level. But why is he allowed to compete here, considering the gap between his level and the internal elixir realm? Patrick said. A lot of doubts crossed his mind. Don't forget that back when he was in the Cloud sect, he defeated a bunch of illuminating soul realm warriors when he was just at the nature level. Now that Zen has reached the illuminating soul realm, it is possible that he has the ability to fight against those internal elixir realm warriors. Rocher said and shook his head. Rocher's words fell on a warrior's ears who stood next to him. The warrior's face darkened. What do you mean possible? The brat only got a bit lucky. I'm sure he won't survive this fight. The disciple of the Bloodwood Cliff will definitely beat him, he said. The warrior who spoke to them was a member of the Gongsun clan. Although he was not a core disciple, he had strong sense of honor to his family. He was quite unhappy to hear what Rocher had said. Lucky, Rocher smiled. It seems that we have missed a match. Zen has already fought and won one, Rocher said to Patrick. However, this round doesn't look too good for Zen. The person from the Bloodwood Cliff is not easy to deal with, Patrick said and fixed his eyes firmly on the arena. They came from the same sect as Zen and entered the Cloud Hall together. They got a bit worried when they saw how extremely powerful Zen's opponent was. Oh, he won't survive this. No way, it's an internal elixir realm master on the other side. Louis cried out. However, Rocher just raised his eyebrows and a smile graced his lips. I don't know why, I have the hunch that Zen will. Zen will win all the way through to the end. Louis, give me all your money. What are you trying to do? Louis subconsciously held on tight to his space ring. He was the one who had reaped the most benefits from their mission because he had an advantage in speed and bodily movement. Thus, he had obtained a lot of life vitality crystals from the mission. Don't be nervous, Rocher said and reached out a hand. Did you see the sign over there? The odds are out, and the odds against Zen are shockingly high. I want to take a gamble, he explained. Rocher wasn't a gambler, but he felt that Zen always had a good luck on his side. He just wanted to see if his hunch was right. Nope, Louis screamed. Give them to me, Rocher said coldly. No, the two of them continued to grapple for the money in Louis' space ring. A gust of wind gently flew by, and the tip of Rocher's sword was pressed against Louis' neck once again. Louis sighed. It seemed that he would never win as long as Rocher could threaten him. He couldn't do anything but hand over his money to Rocher in resignation. Just after Rocher had placed his stake, the luminous curtain in the center of the arena disappeared, and the battle between Zen Luo and Brody Bu began. Chapter 478, A Present. The soul-killing poisoned blood was one of Bloodwood Cliff's secret methods. It was a frighteningly powerful skill that could push a cultivator's potential to the extreme, however, it had one crucial side effect that it could cause the user great harm. Unless one's life was an inch from death, the soul-killing poisoned blood skill was not something a sane person would ever think of using. However, it was a risk Brody had to take. Taking Zen down was a task given to him by his leader, and failure was not an option. He only hoped that his leader would give him a reward that would help him reach a higher refining level. After being planted the blood symbol, Brody's eyes burned with a bloodthirst as he stared up at Zen. When the curtain of light flickered and disappeared, hot, scarlet flames burst forth from his hand. I have gained understanding and comprehension of 1/3 of the fire law. If you've got any brains, you know it would be better for you to just stand still as I burn you to ashes with my blood flames. As soon as he finished talking, the blood flame in his hand soared menacingly, eager to kill, eager to burn. Fire law, I can't believe it. Brody actually mastered the fire law. What in the world is going on with this year's martial arts contest? Law power is not at all easy to learn. It is extremely difficult and complicated. How come all cultivators of the internal elixir realm seem to have grasped it? Don't be so overly dramatic. Brody is one of the top disciples of Bloodwood Cliff after all. He's definitely qualified to be one of the people that can comprehend law power. But, to be honest, I'm still quite surprised by the strength of the contestants for this year's contest. So many of them have already comprehended law power. In the past, only the top 3 could accomplish such a feat. What are you talking about? Back then, only the strongest cultivators of the virtual tribulation realm could master law power. It's amazing how so many talented cultivators suddenly showed up all of a sudden. Blood flame, you want to burn me? The scarlet flame burned bright, but it did not faze Zen one bit. Smiling, as if to mock his opponent, he waved his hand and a wisp of pure fire appeared over his palm. He pointed at the flame, and in the next second, it formed a protective circle of fire around him. Fight fire with fire, he said. Since you want to attack me with your flames, I shall do the same to you. What? I thought Zen was only a body refiner. What the heck is going on? His flame looks weak. But why do I feel so overwhelmed with its power? Oh my gosh, that's the complete fire law. Someone suddenly exclaimed in shock. You're right, but how did he do it? That's impressive. Another round of heated discussion broke out among the spectators. Hobbs, one of the 3 chiefs of the World Commercial Alliance, rose from his seat. He narrowed his eyes at the pure flame that fiercely burned over Zen's palm. The chief was a practitioner of fire system techniques and had almost comprehended the first layer of fire law raging fire and mastered 30% of its second layer ashes. However, since there wasn't a complete raging fire in the central region, he wasn't able to finish the first layer. Looking at the intense, pure flame over Zen's palm, Hobbs realized that the lad had somehow fully mastered raging fire. How did he do it? He wondered to himself. Hobbs turned to Dylan. Didn't you say that he was a runic expert? He asked abruptly. How did his comprehension of the fire law reach this degree? Dylan did not answer and could only stare blankly at the flame burning in Zen's hand, equally flabbergasted. Upon the platform wherein the people of the ethereal spirit sect were seated, Brent stared in fixation at Zen's flame. He curled his lips, and turned to Philip and said, he's even way stronger than you said. That's the perfect power of the fire law. Brent's words caused Philip to turn away from embarrassment and quickly change the topic. So what? Compared to fire law, isn't the space law you refine more powerful and difficult to master? Philip is right. Time law and space law are considered the most powerful. However, only a few talented cultivators can master the complete fire law, and Zen is one of them. He has truly underestimated him, Brent brooded. The complete law of fire. This young man is truly interesting. I feel like I've seen him before, Eddie murmured. He had ranked number 1 in the central region and had not paid much attention to Zen since he had been more interested in the supposedly stronger warriors. Marilyn remained silent, but his son was quick to dismiss his thoughts as he said, Dad, you haven't set foot in the central region for years. You must have mistaken him for someone else. However, Eddie disagreed and shook his head. No, I've met him once. I'm certain of it, I just don't remember where. And he was right. Back in the Cloud sect, his huge face had sneered at Zen. It wasn't really surprising that he forgot though, seeing that he had only met him once. At that time, Zen was an unremarkable nobody to Eddie, so there was no reason for him to remember him. I would have never thought that the Cloud Hall would be able to cultivate such a genius. He not only reached the illuminating soul realm but also comprehended the first layer of fire law. And he is a body refiner too. Eden, it looks like you should cultivate harder. Eddie said with a composed and confident smile. He obviously did not consider Zen to be strong enough as his son's opponent. Eden was his son. Hearing his father's words, Eden nodded. The confidence shining on his face, he declared firmly, Don't worry, Dad. I won't disappoint you. Is that so? Eddie asked, looking at his son. Eden nodded his head. Of course, you invested a lot in me. If I fail to stand out in the contest, I'll be a laughingstock. Just wait and see. I'll defeat all these so-called geniuses. He declared with certainty. His son's words were haughty, but Eddie nodded his head approvingly. He is my son. I have complete faith in him. He is surely more powerful than the other contestants, he thought to himself, pride swelling in his chest. When she saw Zen's display of the fire law, Letitia's eyes widened in astonishment. It was then that she realized that she truly knew nothing about her disciple. When they first met, she had been impressed by his display of great talent during the Cloud Road test. Ever since then, she had the gut feeling that Zen would rise to be a key figure in the Cloud Hall, which was why she spent so much time and energy cultivating him. It came as a surprise to her when Zen later started to study runes. She fondly remembered how the chief runic expert marveled at his strength and claimed that Zen was even better at runes than him. Then, when Zen returned from the Dragon Soar arena, she found out that he had actually comprehended the space law. Now, during the martial arts contest, he had just showcased the body refining technique he was good at. She didn't have any idea that he had actually started learning the fire law. Even more surprising was that he had actually completed and comprehended the first layer of fire law. As far as she knew, there was no intact introduction to raging fire in the central region, which was the primary reason why Hobbs of the World Commercial Alliance couldn't fully grasp the first layer of fire law. Upper world, Zen must have inherited the fire law there, Letitia surmised in her heart. And her assumption was right. However, it wasn't just the fire law. What Letitia had never expected was that Zen had in fact mastered the 9 original laws after his baptism by the laws. Although Brody had almost lost his mind, he could sense that the flame over Zen's palm was powerful. Despite that, he had no time to hesitate. Since he had been planted with blood runes by Lady Poison Blood, he had no other choice but to take Zen out. His face distorted in a white-hot rage as he shouted, "Go to perdition." Brody rushed forward, a brown scimitar appearing in his hand. In a split second, scarlet, blood flames engulfed the entirety of the blade. He advanced at an alarming speed. In a blink of an eye, he was already poised above Zen, ready to strike him down. Blood flame hacking. Blazing blood flames licked the scimitar's blade, adding more power to his attack. With the blood rune, Brody's moves were amplified to be tremendously overwhelming with each strike. However, just as he swung down his blade, Zen was already gone, nimbly dodging his strike. Giving his opponent no time to react, Zen quickly directed his flame towards Brody, striking his chest with his palm hard. Bang! Brody was sent back a few feet but was nonetheless standing. Finding his ground, he quickly swung his flaming scimitar at Zen's direction, aiming for the fire circle that surrounded him. As soon as his blood flame and Zen's fire collided, it started to devour each other. Since Zen hadn't ever been exposed to any fire system cultivation technique, he couldn't fully unleash the power of the flame he held in his hand. But, compared to the cultivation method, the comprehension of law power was more important. The flame Brody had released looked amazingly powerful, but soon, it became apparent that he was at a disadvantage. Brody's blood flame was much weaker than Zen's. If two cultivators practiced the law power of the same attribute, the one who had a better understanding of what they refined was stronger. It meant that Brody was comparatively weaker in fire law than Zen. However, Brody was still a warrior at the internal elixir realm and he had intense willpower to win. The only thing that occupied his mind at that very moment was how to end Zen's life. Realizing his blood flame was now being controlled by Zen, Brody had to think fast. He immediately bit the tip of his tongue and broke the skin. The familiar metallic taste of blood filled his mouth and he spat, the red liquid oozing from his tongue to his blade. The blood flame soared and managed to break free from Zen's fire circle. With his fire back, Brody roared, rushing forward with his scimitar, ready to swing down on his opponent. Thanks to the time he took to refine his body, Zen was able to move swiftly, quickly moving aside to avoid Brody's strike. Having avoided his opponent, Zen took a step backward and gave himself some distance as he steadied himself. The failure did not frustrate Brody. Rushing quickly towards Zen, he once again swung his scimitar. Blood flame hacking, he shouted in fury. Seeing Brody's rushing figure, Zen focused power on his legs. Looking up at his opponent, Zen zoomed forward to meet him halfway, his right fist raised at the ready. Bang, 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 each punch pierced and echoed through the air as Zen attacked Brody with full strength. His punches were calculated and extremely strong, so strong that the sound of Brody's bones breaking could be heard as his fists landed upon his body. This went on for a bit before Zen was satisfied and stopped punching Brody. He stood up and retreated from where he had originally been standing. Meanwhile, Brody was on his knees, struggling to rise after Zen's assault. He clutched at his chest in pain and sent a resentful glare full of bitterness to Zen. However, glaring was all he managed to do as Brody suddenly collapsed on the ground a few seconds later. Zen Juan, Rocher, who was among the audience, said with a subtle smile. Louis heaved a long sigh of relief. He scared the heck out of me. I'm so glad he won. If he lost, I would lose everything, he said, patting his chest. Rocher shook his head and remarked, he's much stronger than I have imagined. He even mastered the fire law. Ah, really, this guy. In the eyes of many, Rocher was already considered a terrifying genius, but he suddenly regarded Zen as a more talented cultivator than him. I don't know whether Zen intends to win first place, but as far as I know, he is very much likely to get into the top 10, Patrick claimed. After having defeated his opponent, Zen remained still and composed. Once Mr. Xiao announced the results and summoned him, he came forward to draw a card. Please God, I hope I can choose. Please let me choose my next opponent. Zen prayed to himself. Slowly, he turned the card over and almost shouted for joy. It seemed God was listening and answered his prayer. He was very much eager to end Marilyn's life, and according to the match rules, he could now fight with her if he wanted to. However, if he did that, Eddie might suspect his identity. It would be wiser to postpone his plans. Reluctantly, Zen put the card aside and returned to the area for the independent warriors. The contest continued on. After several rounds, the difference between the independent warriors and sect disciples was evident in terms of real strength. Most independent warriors were too weak to fight against the sect disciples. Two of the independent warriors, however, captured the audience's attention with their excellent performance. One of them was Owen, who was at the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm, while the other was called Trevor Wongfu. The two independent warriors were able to knock down two top talented disciples, one from the mysterious Luna Hall and the other from the Black Mountain sect. The two of them did not belong to any sect. Most of the cultivators that had passed the pre-qualifying match came from third-grade sects, but Owen and Trevor were different. They were not given any guidance or wisdom from their masters, nor did they learn any kind of secret refinement method from some sect. Both had entered the martial arts contest armed only with their luck and real strength. There were tons of independent cultivators in the central region, but most of them were not even qualified to be disciples of the first-grade or second-grade sects. To think these two were strong enough to come out on top was truly astounding. That was the reason why they caught the crowd's attention. Despite lacking resources and backing, they had managed to refine up to the internal elixir realm. The amount of effort they spent was great, and it was fortunate that they were blessed with such good destiny. The disciples coming from the third-grade sects were the weakest in the martial arts contest. None of them could ever hope to hold up against the strong independent warriors, and they stood no chance of defeating the elites of the fourth-grade sects. After the 32nd round, Mr. Xiao came up to make an announcement. Benson Xuanyuan of the Cloud Hall will battle against Eden Kui, an independent warrior. Eden Kui, the son of the best cultivator in the central region. This is going to be interesting. Someone from the audience exclaimed. It is safe to say that Eden Kui and Brent Zong of the Ethereal Spirit sect are the best cultivators in the contest. I bet one of them will become champion while the other will take second place. I don't agree with you. Benson Xuanyuan is also an amazing cultivator. He comes from the Cloud Hall, which ranks first among the fourth-grade sects. I think he can pose as a tough opponent. Eden Kui, Zen murmured, looking up at Eddie, who was among the audience. He watched as the young man beside Eddie stood and walked towards the battlefield. Zen narrowed his eyes as the young man took center stage. So he's Eddie's son, he thought to himself. Truth be told, Zen wasn't in any way interested in Eddie's son. He had entered the martial arts contest with only two purposes in mind: to slay Marilyn and to get the Dragon Soar Arena. Finding out Eddie's son's strength was of no value to him. It was then that Eden jumped off the platform and floated in midair. He looked down at Mr. Xiao. Please wait a minute, sir, he said politely. Mr. Xiao nodded in agreement. He had no problem with his request. He soared and flew towards the platform of Cloud Hall, landing softly in front of Letitia. The disciples of Cloud Hall, including Benson, looked at Eden with confusion. Delaying the match, flying through the air towards Cloud Hall, what exactly was this young man up to? They wondered. Letitia stared at Eden with bewilderment equal to that of her disciples. You're supposed to fight with my disciple. What are you doing here? She asked. Eden did not reply and only gave her a faint smile. He then clapped his hands. As he clapped, Eden concentrated some life vitality onto his hands. As a result, his claps could be heard loud and clear even from a great distance. Soon enough, four men suddenly appeared and flew towards Eden. What the men carried seemed to be a large package, wrapped in red silk fabric. The four men stood next to Eden, their breathing a bit labored from having carried such a large parcel. "I got you a present, lady," he told Letitia as the men placed the package in front of her. Letitia raised an eyebrow. Why did he give me a gift so suddenly? She thought to herself. She wondered what game he was playing but did not show it in her face. The disciples of the other sects, and even their leaders, were focused with rapt attention at the scene. Walking towards the package, Eden suddenly pulled on the red silk cloth, yanking it off to reveal a large block of ice. "Isn't this Arctic mysterious ice?" she asked, her eyes fixated onto the block. It is no wonder the four men looked so exhausted when they carried it. The Arctic mysterious ice is very heavy and will not melt at all, no matter the season. It can be made into a bed where I can cultivate. If I do that, I'll be able to reach a breakthrough much faster, she mused. Basically, this large ice block could be of great help to Letitia's cultivation. However, this mysterious ice was rare and existed only under the thick ice of the Arctic where the temperature was extremely low. Even a cultivator who had reached the virtual tribulation realm would succumb and freeze in the icy conditions, which made the acquisition of the Arctic mysterious ice extremely difficult. Cultivators who practiced refinement techniques with the ice attribute were transfixed at the sight of the ice block. If they could get it, they could double up their cultivation speed. Turning to the leader of Cloud Hall, Eden began to speak. "Arctic mysterious ice may be considered a treasure to many people, but I'm afraid that, for someone like you, it might actually be insulting to receive such a cheap present." He reached out with his index finger and pointed at the Arctic mysterious ice, releasing a bit of life vitality. Crack! Everyone's eyes widened as cracks began to appear on the surface of the Arctic mysterious ice, and there were a few gasps of horror as the block started to chip and break right in front of them. What has he done? He broke the Arctic mysterious ice. What a pity. Although his father is the #1 in the central region, he shouldn't have wasted such a treasure. I really wish he could have just given it to me. I would give him anything in exchange. A lot of the people present felt their hearts drop as they watched Eden destroy the rare and extremely valuable Arctic mysterious ice. Such a wonderful treasure had been destroyed so easily by a mere index finger, which was truly heartbreaking. Eden, however, was oblivious to their remarks. It was only when the Arctic mysterious ice had been reduced to rubble did he sweep off the ice chunks to reveal a bright, glowing core. Since it was surrounded by ice debris, the crowd could not clearly see what it was. That glowing core, what could it be? Chapter 479, The Proposal. Eden nonchalantly pushed the fragments of Arctic mysterious ice away, before he lifted the glimmering item, holding it up to admire. Smiling slightly, he said, "I want to give this to the head of Cloud Hall as a gift." He proudly gazed down at the sparkling small golden crown he held. There were 3 breathtaking crystals embedded into the delicate circlet. They were brilliant white crystals that, instead of radiating and bouncing off the many facets, they captured the light and reflected a softened, faint silvery shimmer. On the crown's side, 3 feathers were secured. If this small golden crown were made of ordinary gold and gems, it wouldn't be worth anything in the eyes of a martial artist. After all, it didn't take many life vitality crystals to buy a great deal of gold or gemstones. Even a minuscule piece of Arctic mysterious ice was worth more than 10 times an ornate crown made of traditional gold and gems. However, Eden had sealed the golden crown in the Arctic mysterious ice, so, its value could only match or exceed the ice. Most of the warriors didn't recognize it and were confused. However, with so many people present, there was bound to be someone with the knowledge and experience to recognize it. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Wow! That's the heavenly feather crown of the Northern Serenity Palace." The Northern Serenity Palace? The one that once was situated in the Arctic lands? The one that has been destroyed long time ago? Hey, that's right, I remember it now. I saw a picture of the heavenly feather crown. You know, it's a sacred weapon. Before she fell, the Holy Maiden of the Northern Serenity Palace was armed to the hilt with sacred weapons. When she went to war against the 4 divine kingdoms, her forces were crushed and left wounded. Her sacred weapons were divided among 4 divine kingdoms. In the chaos, the heavenly feather crown disappeared. People from the 4 kingdoms searched all of the Northern Serenity Palace, yet no one found it. Wow, it's amazing that Eden found it. This is astounding. Mysterious, spiritual, fairy, and sacred weapons. Fairy weapons could be found throughout the central region, easily. Every sect head had a high-grade fairy weapon, but sacred weapons were rare. Currently, only 3 sacred weapons were known to be in the central region. One was the soul flag, which was held by the Ethereal Spirit sect, the World Commercial Alliance had the Time Copper coin, and Eddie possessed the Nameless Saber. These sacred weapons were confirmed. It was unknown if any others were in the region, where they were, or who had them. A sacred weapon was so powerful and special that it often affected the rise and fall of a sect. Martial artists believed the birth of a sacred weapon heralded a period of great luck because it contained a blessing. Even if it weren't used, and instead housed in a place of honor at the sect, it would bring the sect good luck. For example, the Soul Flag was at the Ethereal Spirit sect, and since they got it, they'd also seen a rise in talented disciples at the sect. In addition, out of the blue, talented applicants showed up. It was the same thing over at the World Commercial Alliance. Although they kept the number of forces hidden from outsiders, everyone saw the changes, and how the alliance had grown since they got the weapon. For Eddie, it was the Nameless Saber that brought the luck. Before obtaining the saber, Evil East Lord Eddie was merely an independent warrior, but, with his sacred weapon, Eddie rose up and soon became known as the most powerful person in the Central region. Many sects dreamed of having a sacred weapon. The weapon's strength was secondary to the luck that came with it. A sacred weapon, oh my goodness, he's wealthy and incredibly lucky. Why couldn't I be the son of the Evil East Lord? A spendthrift, he's truly a spendthrift. Why does he want to give the sacred weapon away? But, I don't understand. Why is Eden gifting the sacred weapon to the Cloud Hall's leader? Oh, wait, I know, he has his eyes on Letitia. Am I right? The warriors in the stands also started a heated discussion. Roche, Patrick and the others frowned while watching the events unfold on the stage. Although Roche bore no ill will to Eden, the animosity Zen felt toward his father made up for it. Roche knew about Zen's determination. He was convinced that once Zen thought he himself was strong enough, he would definitely fight Eddie. When the battle would happen was unknown. Although Roche and Patrick weren't able to help much, they were on Zen's side. Since Eddie was evil, it was a given that his son would be too. His intentions behind gifting the sacred weapon to Letitia were confusing. The Bloodwood Cliffs leader, Lady Poison Blood, as well as elderly Luna of the mysterious Luna Hall, and Raven of the Black Mountain sect were all extremely envious. The most envious of them was Lady Poison Blood. She and Letitia were both women, and she believed her herself to be as beautiful as Letitia. Then why would Eden want to give Letitia the crown? When Marilyn, behind Eddie, looked at that heavenly feather crown, her face was filled with dissatisfaction. It was a good sacred weapon, but Eddie didn't give it to her, but gave it to someone else instead. She had even gotten into an awkward situation with Eddie over this. Eden smiled. The Ethereal Spirit sect is a 5th grade sect. They have their own sacred weapon, and the World Commercial Alliance is nearly more powerful than a 5th grade sect. The Cloud Hall is the 3rd largest sect in the Central region, a 4th grade sect. It would make no sense if it didn't have its own sacred weapon. Staring at the heavenly feather crown, Letitia revealed a smile. A sacred weapon is very important to the sect. Our Cloud Hall would also like to have one like that, but whether or not our Cloud Hall has a sacred weapon, I don't see how it concerns you. You're not from our Cloud Hall, why do you want to give me the crown? The gift is too much. I can't take it. Hearing Letitia's words, Eden smiled, turned and clasped his hands towards the sects, then said to Letitia, as martial artists, we do not care about the formalities of mortals. I want to use this opportunity of the martial arts contest to propose to you. Letitia was stunned and blinked her eyes. What do you mean? Eden's face exuded a strong sense of confidence, passing down his father's domineering aura. I want you to be my woman. The warriors in the stands clamored. The atmosphere at the scene exploded once again. Compared to Immortal, a martial artist could live longer, even for hundreds of years. A martial artist's marriage wasn't all that complicated, and they didn't need a matchmaker. It was often straightforward. However, Eden's way was even more direct and bolder. He actually proposed to the head of the Cloud Hall personally in the martial arts contest. Even though his father was the strongest in the Central region, the gap between Eden and Letitia was not small. He was just a mid-stage internal elixir realm warrior. He could be considered an expert in the Central region, but he was not a peerless expert. However, Letitia was a virtual tribulation realm martial artist. Even though she was cultivating the Sutra of Empyrean Goddess and needed to renew her cultivation 9 times, and she had just entered the early stage of virtual tribulation realm, she would soon be able to recover to the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm. She would be a top expert in the Central region by then. She might be weaker than Eddie, but she was definitely not someone that Eden could challenge. A martial artist proposal didn't care about status or money. It didn't require a matchmaker, but it cared about strength. It was venturesome for a warrior in Internal Elixir realm to go up to Letitia to propose to her, even though he had a sacred weapon. Moreover, Letitia was the goddess in the hearts of many warriors. Eden's words, "Become my woman," instantly angered the several 100,000 warriors in the stands. Just because your father is evil East Lord doesn't mean all the women in the world belong to you. You are too shameless. He is daydreaming. Letitia won't say yes just because of a sacred weapon. His plan is not bad. He gets Letitia and also Cloud Hall at the cost of a sacred weapon. This is a good deal. Although the strength of these martial artists was very weak, they had their own judgments. Eden was too shameless. For a time, all sorts of nasty words came out from the stands. Some of the words were indeed very unpleasant to listen to. Eden turned his head and coldly said, "What nonsense are you guys spouting? Do you want to die? We were talking about you. So what? You are shameless. Is there anyone else in the world who knows how to do business better than you? Do you think others are idiots? Your father's dominance is justified, because your father has the strength to do so. Without your father, who would know you?" Although evil East Lord was there, all the warriors were certain that Eden did not dare to fight here. After all, this was the martial arts contest. They didn't think Eden and Eddie dared to kill hundreds of thousands of warriors. The World Commercial Alliance would not sit there and do nothing. Everyone was talking at once, and they were not afraid of Eden's threats at all. Letitia's face broke into a gentle smile, and she looked towards Eddie. She then stared at Eden, her expression cold. "Did your father tell you to do this? Isn't it enough for you to take Yan away? What do you take our Cloud Hall for? And, are you worthy of me?" Previously, Eddie had asked for Yan. The Cloud Hall was unwilling to offend him, so even though they were reluctant, they still sent Yan over. Because of this matter, there was a quarrel between Letitia and Zen. She regretted it a lot. She never thought that Eddie's son would actually come and propose to her. This was the biggest joke in the world. Chapter 480, Not Pretty. Eden didn't get angry at Letitia's sarcastic remarks. Instead, he continued to smile and said, "Is Lady Letitia referring to the differences between our realms in cultivation? If you really think so, I have to admit I don't meet the requirements at the moment. But, I do have a divine level talent. So, it's just a matter of time before I step into the virtual tribulation realm. With luck, I'll be able to make a breakthrough in the virtual tribulation realm and become even stronger." Divine level talent. Is he bragging? When did divine level talent appear in the central region? According to historical records, up until now, divine level talent hasn't been seen in the central region. Only 6 warriors, possessing divine level talent, have appeared in the 4 divine kingdoms, and each of them established a divine kingdom of their own later. I can't imagine such a person really exists. A powerful father plus he has divine level talent, he truly is amazing. Hearing the warriors discuss about him, the corners of Eden's mouth curved slightly upward in a proud grin. Listening to what was being said, Brent from the ethereal spirit sect turned to Philip, who was next to him, and hurriedly said, "Philip, he says that he has divine level talent, too. But, didn't you tell me that divine level talent is very rare?" Philip sighed and rolled his eyes but kept quiet. Brent was really troublesome. In fact, Philip agreed, inwardly. He found it strange that there were such a large number of people possessing outstanding qualities coming from the central region in recent years. It was as though the disciples' strengths in the various sects had reached new heights overnight. In the past, it was a rarity for a top disciple from a great sect to understand even a trace of the law power while he was in the internal elixir realm. But, over the last decade, there were more and more refiners at the internal elixir realm emerging who had mastered the law power. It was as if geniuses sprang up everywhere suddenly. At one time, a warrior possessing heaven-level talent was a highly valued member of the sect. Warriors with saint-level talent were even rarer, and every few decades, one would appear. But now, no less than 10 warriors possessed the saint-level talent at the ethereal spirit sect, and there was even one with divine-level talent. What was happening in the central region? How was it possible for it to suddenly become so remarkable that so many outstanding talents were springing up? The divine-level talent. The group of disciples from Cloud Hall thought Eden was overly arrogant, and especially Benson, and he hoped that he'd have the chance to knock this brat down a peg or two with his fist soon, in the arena. However, after discovering that Eden was a divine-level talent, Benson felt a bit powerless. As a warrior with heaven-level talent, Benson was already a top elite of Cloud Hall. If what Eden had was saint-level talent, Benson would have been able to accept it. But, it turned out that Eden actually had divine-level talent. According to legend, a warrior with divine-level talent was destined to be emperor in the future and could become the top ruler of this diverse world and from there, dominate the whole universe. He wondered, was it really true that the guy standing in front of him could achieve that? Enough of this. Eden, this is the martial arts contest. Put up or shut up. Benson approached Eden, signaling the start of the match. Please, he said, politely. However, Eden turned a blind eye to Benson's gesture. He smiled at Letitia and said, Lady Letitia, please accept this gift as a token, from me. With Letitia's hot temper, she could have scolded the brat earlier and kicked him from the stage. But, as the leader of Cloud Hall, she had to give due consideration to the overall situation. Eddie was sitting in his seat, making no comment, making it obvious to her that he had given his consent to this proposal. What were they up to? Just then, laughter broke out from below and a voice firmly said, Ha ha, you want to marry our leader with a mere sacred weapon. Do you think the leader of Cloud Hall is a child, who can be lured away with candy easily? You have made a good plan but you shouldn't have made it in the first place. It was Zen speaking. Eden's face darkened immediately. Although some warriors had said rude things about his behavior earlier, Eden couldn't lose his temper at any of them. After all, there were too many of them. However, none of them dared to speak out like Zen did, publicly. After all, anyone dared to do that had to consider Eden's identity and his father's influence. A sacred weapon. Eden glared coldly at Zen and demanded, Who do you think you are? What makes you qualified to judge a sacred weapon? Have you even seen one in your life? Zen smacked his lips, shook his head, and said, You're so naive to show off a sacred weapon, and it's only a crown. As soon as Zen finished talking, he walked over to Letitia quickly. As he walked, he tapped the space ring Letitia had given him. There was a flash of light as he pulled a body protection garment out of the space ring. Tia, this body protection garment isn't pretty, but it is also a sacred weapon. As he explained, Zen closed the distance between Letitia and himself and put the body protection garment which he got from the upper world on her. When Letitia saw the body protection garment, she was shocked. But, before she could check the value of the body protection garment, it dawned on her that Zen had actually called her Tia in front of all these people. Letitia's face flushed with anger. As she opened her mouth to tell Zen off, he pulled the garment over her, catching her off guard. Letitia froze. Zen did this intimate act in front of hundreds of thousands of warriors. Although warriors didn't usually care much about propriety, and were more tolerant about female warriors' mannerisms, Letitia was the leader of Cloud Hall, and no disciples had ever dared assist in dressing her. Then again, she wondered, was this body protection garment really a sacred weapon? It didn't look like one. However, as soon as Letitia was ensconced in the garment, it emitted a bright light that resembled ripples on a lake. The ripples intertwined together, forming a small protective shield that covered her entire body. At the same time, a warm feeling spread throughout Letitia's body. She felt her physical strength increasing by 40% at least. Who would have thought the body protection garment would have such an effect? It was definitely one of the sacred weapons. Wrapped up in the warm shield, Letitia no longer thought about Zen's offensive behavior moments ago. Letitia very clearly knew the value of the body protection garment. Defensive weapons were more sought after than offensive ones. There were no mid-grade sacred weapons in the central region. However, if anyone offered a mid-grade sacred weapon in exchange for the body protection garment, she would turn them down. She would be a fool to take the offer. The body protection garment is indeed a sacred weapon, exclaimed Letitia smiling. It is a little unsightly, but I can make do. Make do. It's a sacred weapon. Many warriors' hearts were jolted hearing Letitia's remarks. Obviously, she was directing her comments especially in Eden's face. Sorry, it's the only one I have. I promise, I will find a beautiful one for you next time. Zen's voice softened and he smiled faintly. Flop. Jaws dropped at the staggering conversation. The body protection garment really is a sacred weapon. Oh my goodness, the value of the body protection garment surpasses that of the ethereal spirit sect's soul flag, most likely, along with the World Commercial Alliance's time copper coin, and Eddie's nameless saber. It will become our most valuable treasure in the central region. Wow, Zen is quite bold. He's made a mockery of Eden's heavenly feather crown. Eden would probably be so anxious that he will want to dig a hole in the ground and vanish into it. And Zen promised to find another beautiful one, as it's so easy to find sacred weapons. Zen's so generous. He actually got a sacred weapon and gave it to someone else randomly. What's the relationship between Letitia and Zen? He's clearly a disciple of Cloud Hall, but he didn't follow Letitia's orders, and he even called her Tia. What's going on between the two of them? As the crowd continued to discuss the garment, Zen and Letitia, Eden's face darkened. This guy, he was only at the 4th level in the illuminating soul realm, and here he pulled out a sacred weapon, a body protection garment, and just casually gave it away. Although the heavenly feather crown was a sacred weapon as well, it was a crown which was only an accessory after all, when compared to the far more precious body protection garment. The biggest issue Eden had was who fashioned the body protection garment. Why was it so ugly? It would never cross his mind that the sacred weapon was a uniform for common officers and warriors at the Dragon Abyss Palace. Almost everyone there had a suit like that one. The body protection garment was designed with maximize function in mind, and style was less important. The 3 fat leaders of the World Commercial Alliance exchanged a glance with each other, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Actually, the World Commercial Alliance didn't have only the one sacred weapon known to the public new as the Time Copper coin. However, the other 2 sacred weapons that the World Commercial Alliance never disclosed to the public couldn't hold a candle to the body protection garment that Zen gave Letitia.